You're watching BCTV. We're all about Branford. You're watching BCTV, Branford Government Television, a service of Branford Community Television. This program is brought to you in part through the support of the town of Branford.
Good evening. My name is Peter Basserman, Chairman of the Inland Wetland Commission for Branford. It is 7 o'clock on April 25th, 2024. This meeting is being conducted in accordance with Public Act 22-3. We're going to use the Zoom platform this evening. BCTV is recording this evening. So I would ask that those that are speaking make sure that your face is visible within the Zoom framework. Also that you state your name each time that you speak. The agenda for this evening is the one dated April 24th. Yesterday was revised. The material was mailed to the commissioners and is available on the town's website. We're going to do a roll call now of the commissioners. Commissioner Gokowski.
Commissioner Gokowski, present.
Commissioner Papatonis.
Commissioner Papatonis, present.
Commissioner Begeman.
Commissioner Begeman, present.
Commissioner Boda.
Commissioner Boda, present.
And I think I got everybody. Commissioner Basserman, present. Is there one more? Okay, we have, as a result of the 5 commissioners present, we have a quorum. All commissioners are present this evening and may participate fully and vote. So we have 3 sets of minutes to deal with first. Looking for approval, first off, for the March 28th, 2024 regular meeting minutes.
Before, as Commissioner Begeman, I think there's a typo in the minutes for approval, just for the date. At the end of the first paragraph, it says revisions will be made to the minutes by Kay Blanchett and reviewed during the March 25th meeting. Was that supposed to be April 25th or?
Yes.
Okay.
You want to offer an amendment to those minutes, Clarice?
Oh, sure. Can the minutes for the March 28th, 2024 regular meeting minutes be amended under minutes for approval that the date at the end of the paragraph be changed from March 25th to April 25th?
Is there a second for that?
Commissioner Papatonis, second.
I can't imagine discussion, but is there any discussion on that? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, next up, April 11th, 2024 special meeting minute, which is the site walk.
This is
Somebody looking to speak?
Clarice, I think you're muted.
Commissioner Begeman. If there's no discussion about the minutes, I'll make a motion that we approve the site walk minutes from Thursday, April 11th, 2024.
Commissioner Gokowski, I second that motion.
And given the motion said that there would be no discussion, anybody opposed? Anybody abstaining?
One abstention.
Okay, so we have sufficient numbers to approve the special meeting site walks of April 11th. Last up, we have the regular meeting minutes for April 11th.
This is Commissioner Begamon again. Thank you, Katie, for making those changes that I mentioned. And if there's no one with any other concerns about these minutes, I'll make a motion that we approve the regular meeting minutes revised from Thursday, March 28, 2024.
Commissioner Papantonis, second.
Any abstentions? All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any
Aye.
opposed? Any opposed? Okay. So we have now item 2 on our agenda, which is Inland Wetland 240102 38 Howard Avenue. Is a continuation of the public hearing held at our regular meeting of March 28th, 2024. The material received since the March meeting has been added to the Dropbox. First, a couple of procedural matters. Is there any commissioner present this evening that was absent for all or part of our regular meeting of 3/28/24? Pardon me, of 4/11/24. If so, have you listened to the recording of that portion of the meeting that you missed and have a full understanding of the comments made during that meeting? Any such, Commissioner?
So this is Commissioner Boda. I had to leave early for the last meeting. I have not had an opportunity to watch the recording. So I'll participate, but if there's a vote tonight, I will not participate in the vote.
Thank you, Commissioner Boda. Second, is there any commissioner seated this evening who feels he or she cannot assess the material presented during the course of these proceedings, including tonight, in a fair and equitable manner, consistent with our regulations and state statutes? If so, I ask that you recuse yourself from this matter. Is there any such commissioner that is not able to assess the material tonight or previously presented in that manner? Okay, now I have a few introductory remarks. In the review of applications requesting permittable activities, the Commission engages in a fact-finding process to determine whether such application has met the criteria specified in our town's regulations and in Connecticut state statutes. When a public hearing is required for those regulations, the Commission engages in a process that provides an opportunity for the applicant, registered interveners, as well as members of the public to participate. Commission desires all parties have a chance to speak and provide evidence supporting their position that will be considered in assessing the requested permit. Pertinent to this evening's hearing, I would ask that those participating be conscious of the time taken to present testimony or ask questions. We have a full agenda, and so I ask for your cooperation so that everyone has a chance to participate. The Commission does not give more weight to issues when they are presented multiple times. Once is enough. Finally, after all parties have concluded their testimony, the public hearing is closed. By state statute, the Commission has 35 days to decide. The Commission's decisions are a collective process where each commissioner makes an independent judgment based on the evidence presented during the proceeding. Individual votes are then accumulated for a commission decision. At this point, let's see, Jamie, do you have an update since the last public hearing?
Jamie Frederick, in the Wetland Agent. Just a reminder that the public hearing did require an extension to be continued to tonight's meeting. So the public hearing has to be closed this evening, or the commission has to request that the applicant consent to another extension of the time frame. And then what else? Oh, and then after the commission closes the public hearing, the commission has 35 days to deliberate and make a decision regarding the application. I think those are the two things that I wanted to mention.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Jamie, is there any outstanding material that was requested previously that you have not received yet?
I think that that responses have been submitted to the questions that were raised at the last meeting. And there were some things that were outlined in my staff report, which have been responded to. I did get an updated staff report completed the end of the day yesterday, and it's available in the Dropbox. We have received 3 documents, I believe, since that staff report was revised. But yeah, I think that we've received responses to everything, and it's a matter of, the commission reviewing it and determining if it's satisfactory.
Okay. This is Commissioner Basserman. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to the applicant if they want to take any time to either review the material recently presented or add to the discussion that they previously entered onto the record.
Chair Basserman, this is Commissioner Begman. Can I just say something before we get started?
Absolutely.
Okay. For the record, I just wanted to be known that at the last meeting for this public hearing, March 28th, it was around 11:30 p.m. And I expressed my feelings that given the information presented to date, it felt like we were at a place of no solution. I also stated I wasn't ready to make a decision. I just want everyone to know that I'm open and eager to hear and see additional information presented tonight so that we can reach a decision.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other statements from the commission at this point? Then I'd like to proceed with the applicant.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I sufficiently audible?
You are to me.
Thank you. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. I'm attorney Marjorie Shansky. I represent Kim McCabe and Charles Watts of 38 Howard Avenue. I'm here this evening with them and with Jim Preddy from Criscolo Engineering, our site civil engineer, Matt Davison, soil scientist, wetland biologist, and Connecticut certified forester from Davison Environmental, Joe Perugini, professional engineer from Weston and Sampson, who provided a drainage peer analysis that was transmitted to the commission, and attorney Sarah Diodabo. As I referenced, and as Jamie has referenced, we have submitted to the commission the structural report from Charles Brown that was promised to the commission at the last meeting. Jim Preddy has provided additional correspondence responding to questions that had been tendered. He has also provided some more detail on the plans, and of course he's here this evening and can respond to any questions that the commission may have about that information provided, or simply to walk the commission through what he has provided at the commission's election. As I said, Joe Perugini has provided a drainage peer review analysis. His resume is in the record, some additional photographs, and we provided Mr. Dunn's sketches such as they were. They were not contemporaneous, but his description of the work that he performed was, and that is included in a letter that I sent to the commission dated April 18th. So, Mr. Chairman, I have some summary comments that I would like to share with the commission, but I would suggest that if there were any questions from the commission to Mr. Preddy or Mr. Davison or to Mr. Perugini relating to his drainage peer review, that this would be an optimum time to advance those?
This is Commissioner Bassman. Yes, I'd like to hear regarding the drainage report. If we can be quick in going over that, I think that would be helpful for all to understand that review.
Mr. Perugini's review, is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. Perugini.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Joe Perugini. I'm a professional engineer with Weston and Sampson. Very briefly, I perform peer reviews on behalf of numerous municipalities in Connecticut, Massachusetts, and I have a background in civil engineering, drainage, analyses, stormwater management, and all manners of site civil. I was asked to perform an independent peer review of the drainage calculations that were performed by Chris Guolo Engineering, Mr. James Preddy. I reviewed the calculations, also the survey pre and post development that were prepared, and also performed a site visit. This was back on the, I believe, the 18th. And so in reviewing the drainage calculations, I had determined that the change in peak flows, when we look at the change in peak flows, we look at what the increase is from what they were existing to what they were after development. And I had indicated that the range of values for the 2 through 100-year storm were in the hundredths of a CFS, or cubic foot per second. So these are considered quite small, but they are increases. But when we look at what is actually happening to the drainage, it was important to explain where the drainage, how it runs off, where it goes, and what's actually happening. And so I went into a little bit of explanation and provided some description in the review of the pathway of the runoff. And so I'll try to be brief, but to the point. Under current conditions, a portion of the runoff from the rear yard, under pre-development conditions, thank you very much. It's very helpful. If we could go to the prior figure, the one before this. Thank you. This is a figure of the runoff under existing conditions, and the total is about 2,700 square feet. You could see a triangle of 260 square feet is, according to the grades, is directed at the property to the north, 34 Howard Avenue. When it reaches the property line, based on a site visit, there is some ledge in that area. It would run off and flow up against the house foundation and then follow it down and head to the northeast, to the wetlands. So it all does go to the wetlands, but in particular, that triangle does flow or did flow towards the property to the north. Next slide, please, or next figure. This is a zoom in of the current conditions after the patio was installed, and a survey was done with spot elevations throughout. And I added arrows to show the general direction based on the high points and where water's flowing. Most of the runoff flows to the upper right or northeast. And then there is some portion of that patio that flows north or straight up. Based on the spot elevations that were given, I was able to interpolate, so I added some spot elevations between the spots that were shot. And there's about a 2% grade along the wall that is located along that property line. And so from being out there, there is an extension of the wall above the patio with a wall cap, and I was referring to it as a wall curb. So it prevents water from just flowing over the wall and into the property as it did, and preventing it from flowing onto the property under pre-development conditions. So this runoff, that portion of the arrows that are directed upwards, runs along the wall and then turns in a northeasterly direction and flows toward the area in green, which I added some color because it's developed or designed as a landscaped area. Currently, it's topsoil. So that runoff that runs along the wall, based on the spot elevations and the visual observation, would flow collectively with the entire patio into that landscaped area. Within that landscaped area is approximately 12 to 18 inches of topsoil. It lays on top of filter fabric, and then below that is crushed stone, about 24 inches of crushed stone width behind the retaining wall, which is typical for what is backfilled behind a wall. And in the report, and based on a conversation with the contractor and how the wall was constructed, the wall would have been, there's ledge throughout, but in order to properly place the wall, a concrete footing was placed over the ledge and creates a stable base on which the wall was built. So that footing was pinned, holes were drilled into the ledge, and rebar was driven or pushed through the openings and epoxied in and up into the footing. So you have this concrete footing that is located throughout on which the wall was built. So that footing creates a seal pretty much along the ledge and a stable base on which the wall was placed. So getting back to
this is Commissioner Bassman. Is that something that you observed, or is that something that you're understanding from testimony given on this item?
As far as the
pinning of the foundation.
That was what I was told when discussing the construction of the wall and how it was placed. I did see photos of that footing, and before the concrete was poured, I saw a photo of the rebar sticking out of the ledge and turned inward towards the direction, and there were also additional rebar in that footing. So reinforcement was placed throughout, and it was cast in place onto the ledge. So that was poured directly onto the ledge and pinned to the ledge. So what that does is it prevents the footing, the wall, from sliding over the ledge. So you have that resistance. So
thank you. Sorry for the interruption.
Oh, no problem. No problem. I welcome any questions. Getting back to the drainage, it was important for me to know, the construction of the material behind the wall. It's typical to put crushed stone, which I was informed was put in approximately 24 inches of width. So within that landscaped area, it varies in width. You could see in green, it varies from anywhere from 6.5 to 7.5 feet. So you have this thickness of topsoil. Below that, you have filter fabric, and then you have crushed stone in the portion behind the wall, and you have some processed stone, which is a stable base beyond the crushed stone. So you have this area of stone, crushed stone being the one that has the highest voids. That was important because the question is, where does the water go? If it's running off the pavers, it goes into the topsoil, which is in the planting bed. And considering what happens to the runoff, some saturates the topsoil, some can pass down through the filter fabric and into the crushed stone. There's a volume of storage that could happen in there. That's important because it creates some detention. We look at how is the runoff being, the peak flow being reduced. So when we get back to the original comment about the increases in peak flow, to me, that storage is going to be offsetting the increases. These are very small increases, but that storage of runoff, where is it going? I don't believe it's running past the topsoil and over the wall. It would have to be an incredible amount of runoff to do so, but you also have the topsoil saturating. If there are plantings, that creates an uptake into vegetation, similar to like a rain garden. You may have evaporation, but also anything that overwhelms the topsoil and saturation will probably just percolate down through the stone. And in the base of behind the retaining wall, as I mentioned, there's crushed stone. There were PVC pipes that were placed at the low point, what would be that corner that you see, the rounded corner and radius. There's a couple of PVC pipes, exactly. I see the cursor there. And it was called out PVC on the survey, a couple of pipes there that would create some relief so water isn't filling up and creating this hydrostatic pressure behind the wall. You always need some sort of relief for the drainage. Again, getting back to the drainage, I was comfortable with the storage of runoff, the small amount of detention that it's creating. This is not an increase in runoff that, because of the paver patio, it's considered an impervious surface. In my report, I also indicate that it was important to find out, are these pervious pavers or not? This product that was used, they make two versions, and from what I observed as to what was installed here, these are not the pervious pavers that have wider joints and high void space in the joints, high void space material. This was a polymeric sand that was used, and these are very tight joints. So I don't expect very much at all of runoff moving down through those joints. They may get moist or have some sort of moisture, but not like pervious pavers. So I would expect runoff to flow across these and follow the arrows and the directions that I hopefully was understandable as to where the runoff goes. So that was another concern. I understood that there was a real concern for the neighbors and the runoff crossing the property line, and under conditions before the development, it was just sheet flowing right off the property. And from what I'm seeing, it's getting diverted entirely to the northeast towards the landscaped area.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Were you on site after a rain event, or was that not part of what you were able to observe?
The day we were there was a slight on and off drizzle, but not enough where you could see that kind of something visible, that kind of runoff. But these are, again, I looked at the model and type of paver that's used here, and I also watched or observed the day we were there. The contractor pulled up some paver tiles and started digging through. I wanted to just confirm the material below. I included in my report that it's over the majority of the paver area. It's what you typically see with a leveling sand, 2 to 3 inches. And there were two courses of processed aggregate, which is a very dense graded aggregate that you would put under driveways or roadways. It compacts very well. It has some drainage to it, but it's more for a stability. It won't retain water, but it compacts very well. And from where it was dug down with a post hole digger, it was compacted quite well that the contractor had difficulty just digging through. So that's.
Excuse me, this is Commissioner Goklowski. What was the size of the area that you pulled up? What size of the patio area was removed.
Okay, on that figure, if you look along the wall, you see the spot elevation 41.4.
Yes,
Yeah, we were about probably about 5 feet away from that.
okay.
Um,
5
to
feet
the
going in what direction?
to the southeast or to the closer to the center, or probably closer to the P in the word paver.
So again, what was the area that you pulled up? How much of an area?
It was about a 2 foot by 2 foot wide block area.
So it wasn't a large area. My other question is, was the inland wetland IAW agent on site during this minor excavation?
Not that I'm aware of, but there was a geotechnical engineer that was there and taking
Well,
soil
my
samples.
question is, why wasn't an agent from the inland wetlands invited to this? Because this has been a big topic of conversation regarding what is actually under that patio area. And what you're telling me is you only uncovered a 2 foot area that you seem satisfied with, that you're basing your reputation that that whole area is covered as you state, with 2 to 3 inches of 3/4 process aggregate.
Well, I'm stating that the area that I observed I was
Okay,
confirming
so
what I
you
was able
can't
to observe.
state, so you can't actually state for the whole patio area that that's what's underneath that patio area.
I can't state that, no, without
Okay,
having to
thank
pull
you.
up, the entire area.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Bassman. Any other questions for this individual regarding his report?
I have one other question, Commissioner Goklowski. Did you take any pictures of the area that you uncovered?
I have a photo from the surface.
No, do you have pictures of the areas that were uncovered and showing where the post hole was dug and what was in that area? Do you have any pictures of that?
I think I could find it for you. I don't
Because
think
the only pictures that we show on file is the picture of the nice smooth area of against the wall there.
bear with me. Yeah, I have two photos, and one when I only have a photo of when the pavers were removed and the sand is visible, and then the first digging down through the sand layer was dug. If I can
So
share
nothing to verify the actual width of what the process is or the sand or anything like that. No measurements were actually taken, physical measurements.
Oh, I took measurements. Yeah, they were included in my report.
But I'm saying you don't have any photos of those measurements actually on the.
A photo with a
we weren't there to observe what you saw. So to visit, pictures tell 1,000 words.
Well, my report includes my measurements. There is a separate measurement that was done by the geotechnical engineer. You can compare those with mine. So he took his information separately from mine, and I believe that was submitted for the record. But I don't have a measurement, to your question. I don't have a measurement with a photo next
All
to
right,
the
thank
tape
you
measure.
very much.
Mr. Chairman, with respect, this is Marjorie Shansky. With respect to the rain condition, Mr. Preddy has previously reported to the commission his observations during wet conditions, and Mr. Preddy is here if that's something that the chair would like to revisit with him. And I would like to echo that the letter from the geotechnical engineer has been provided to the commission. The geotechnical engineer has experience with soil and rock mechanics, foundation engineering, earthwork, and site work. He indeed does include his measurements from the site observation and his conclusions, which are that consistent with what Mr. Preddy, Mr. Perugini have said, no technical merit in a claim that the perimeter wall and patio account for any increase in flow or damage to the adjacent property, which is of course not a direct wetland issue. The drainage issue associated for the wetland is where is the water going? And though Mr. Preddy has answered that previously, and it is described in his drainage report, we brought Mr. Perugini in to evaluate and review those conclusions and to arrive at his own conclusion, which is consistent with Mr. Preddy. And if you have additional questions for him, this is as good a time as any. And if you have questions for Mr. Preddy, let's hear from him.
This is Commissioner Bassman. I, for one, given the fact that Mr. Preddy is already on the record with his report at the previous meeting, I don't need to go over that again, but it's certainly open for the commission, if they wish to review that, to step up to the plate and ask Mr. Preddy any questions that are pertinent.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also say to Commissioner Glukowski that Mr. Perugini is here to discuss drainage and the fact that there was an excavation, a minor excavation, in part for the benefit of the geotech, and that the contractor demonstrate that his description to this commission of the technique that he followed and that's described in his memo to the property owner at the time of the installation of the patio are consistent with his testimony. So those stand separately, but they stand for and are representative of the people whose work they represent.
With all due respect, Attorney Shansky, none of us were there when the construction was being taken place. We have to go by the word of the contractor, who we did not hear from for almost 8 months, who came to the meeting and all of a sudden had pictures of the situation. Now, with all due respect, I think it would have been nice that if you notified the inland wetlands agent that you were going on site for a site inspection, so Jamie Fredericks could have observed what they were removing and also be able to put it in her report to the commission. And that is not here. And so I can take all their degrees and everything to heart, but the fact of the matter is we still don't know what's under the entire patio that's there. We can only speculate.
No,
that's
had testimony. You've had testimony. You have the receipt from the acquisition. And Commissioner, I have to say that I listened to the entire proceeding of this body on April 11th on the Chestnut Street NOV, and the empathy that you specifically showed to that owner, and the forgiveness that was inherent in your comments to him about his not knowing that a permit was required for this or that is wholly missing in these proceedings, and I don't know why. But I think you're misinterpreting what happened there, because that is a total different scenario. What's going on here? Your clients built the patio without a permit and without going to the inland wetlands. We would not be here today if they followed the procedure, and they both know the law. And that's all I'm saying. And I'm not going to say anymore. But
This is Commissioner Bassett. We've had this conversation previously. I'd like to kind of move on with tonight's agenda because it is rather lengthy.
We can, Mr. Chairman, but the commissioner is imputing to my client something that he didn't impute to the other owner, and there's no basis for assuming one set of individuals has some greater intuitive understanding of what the world requires than another. So in order to assert the same level of fairness to both, let us just proceed with the evidence.
Agreed. I did ask all the commissioners if they were able to review the material presented both previously and tonight in a fair and equitable manner, and everyone agreed. So I think we can take that and move on here.
I will say one other thing, though, Mr. Chairman, with your indulgence, about the hearing on April 11th, and that is that the chair sagely noted our regulations don't consider intent. It's a true statement. It's an important statement. We're here to evaluate wetland impacts, and that is what has been established in this record. Mr. Chairman, does the commission have any other questions, or shall I proceed with my summary?
I'll open that up for any commissioner that has additional questions for any of the expert witnesses that the applicant has seated tonight. Hearing no other comments, Attorney Shansky, why don't you proceed?
Thank you. As we approach the end of this hearing that has fluctuated between matters squarely within the jurisdiction of the commission to those that are not, we must review the evidence and the controlling legal and regulatory standards to ensure the fair evaluation of the pending application. At the last meeting in March, when the issue of continuation of the public hearing arose to permit the applicant to supply answers to questions raised during the public hearing, Commissioner Papantones demurred and said she did not need to hear any additional information. Nonetheless, the majority of the commission agreed to continue the hearing, and a number of reports by a team of professionals qualified in their respective fields responded to the questions, some of which range far beyond the jurisdictional remit of the commission, but which reports and responses are now part of the voluminous record. Notwithstanding, it's important to recap the evidence that has long since been in the record and that supports the approval of the applicant's pending request. In his first report to the commission, dated July 10th, 2023, Matt Davison wrote, among other things, quote, "No adverse impacts to the intermittent watercourse were observed from patio installation or vegetation cutting on the down gradient slope. No adverse impacts to the watercourse are anticipated from the installation of the paver patio." It's Record Exhibit 12. Mr. Davison has had the opportunity since that date, since the date of that report, to reaffirm his finding in testimony and further correspondence, Record Exhibit 32. In his letter to the commission, dated August 9th, 2023, George Logan of REMA Ecological Services described the subject watercourse and terrain, his review of Matt Davison's report and recommendations, and concluded, among other things, quote, "We are in full agreement with the findings of the Davison report, which also concludes that there are no observable physical impacts to the intermittent watercourse from the installation of the retaining wall and patio or from the cutting of brush on the down gradient slope. We also find the Davison recommendations of seeding bare soil and planting a row of nannyberry to be appropriate." That's Record Exhibit 11. Mr. Logan wrote a second letter dated October 12th, affirming his conclusion, Record Exhibit 35B. In his letter to the commission dated February 14th, 2024, Robert Russo, CLA Engineers, a certified soil test engaged by the intervening neighbors, made a field visit on February 9th and reported, among other things, CLA did not observe local erosion or sedimentation at 34 and 38 Howard Avenue. These determinations remain the only fact-based expert reporting on the issue of and absence of impacts, adverse or otherwise, to the watercourse in the record. There has been a plethora of random claims asserted, none of which have been supported by evidence, much less substantial evidence. They have uniformly relied on speculation and concerns. In repeated cases, the Connecticut Supreme and Appellate Courts have held that a Wetlands Commission may not deny an application on the basis of speculative risks. Citation, Riverbend Associates versus Conservation and Inland Wetlands Commission, 269 Connecticut 57. Lord Family of Windsor LLC versus Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Commission, 103 Con App 354. A mere worry is not substantial evidence. Avalon Bay Communities, Inc. versus Inland Wetlands and Watercourses Agency, 130 Connecticut App 69. The defendant could not simply assume that the entry of sediment and siltation would adversely affect the wetlands and watercourse without evidence that it would in fact do so. And Estate of Machtowski versus Inland Wetlands Commission, 137 Connecticut App 830. Evidence regarding potential impacts to wetlands in the event of a failure of a proposed detention basin does not in itself amount to substantial evidence. These cases uniformly stand for the proposition that a commission must have substantial evidence to support an affirmative finding of harm or potential harm to wetlands or watercourses.
Attorney Jansky, this is Commissioner Boda. Can you just restate the last case that you said, the name of it?
The Machtowski case?
Yeah, that was the last one after Avalon Bay. Yeah.
Machtowski, Estate of Machtowski versus Inland Wetlands Commission, 137 Con App 830. That happens to be one of my cases.
Thank you.
There is no evidence of harm to the watercourse in this case as a result of the unpermitted activity or the proposed activity for which a permit is being sought. Quote, the substantial evidence test is not met by a general statement by an expert that some type of adverse impact is likely to result from the proposed regulated activities. Absent evidence that identifies and specifies the actual harm resulting therefrom, a commission cannot find that the proposed activities will or are likely to adversely impact watercourses or wetlands. That's Three Levels Corporation versus Conservation Commission, 148 Connecticut Appellate 91. Because of the expansion of the inquiry into the mode and manner of construction of the retaining wall and the patio, its stability, how stormwater is managed, the applicant has provided the testimony of the landscaper who built the retaining wall and the patio. Testimony and a written report by a structural engineer have been provided. Letter from Charles Brown, Record Exhibit 75, his curriculum vitae is Record Exhibit 61. There's a letter from Theodore von Rosenvinge. He is the geotechnical engineer from Geodesign. His letter is Record Exhibit 83. His resume is Record Exhibit 84. There has been the drainage peer review from Weston and Sampson, Joe Peruzzi, pardon me. His report is Record Exhibit 73, and his report is at Record Exhibit 82. His CV is at Record Exhibit 73. And of course, there are the several letters and analyses provided by Jim Preddy, Criscolo Engineering, as well as the plans, revised plans and details, which, by the way, if you want him to discuss the construction technique, let's please ask him before we move on from our side of this conversation. It is submitted that, and there's a letter from Mike Ott, a civil engineer, and all of Mr. Davison's and Mr. Logan's reporting and testimony. It is submitted that this substantial body of evidence supports the commission's approval of the application to conduct regulated activity. Section 10.2 of your regulations sets forth the criteria for decision. And quickly, In carrying out the purposes and policies, the agency shall take into consideration all the relevant facts and circumstances, including but not limited to the environmental impact of the proposed regulated activity on wetlands or watercourses. There has been none. I've marshaled it for you. It's in the record. The applicant's purpose for and any feasible and prudent alternatives to the proposed activity which would cause less or no environmental impact to the wetlands. Well, we've already established there has been no adverse impact to the wetlands or watercourse. The relationship between the short-term and long-term impacts of the proposed regulated activity. This activity has neither short-term nor long-term impacts on the wetlands or watercourses. The proposed plantings that Mr. Davison has recommended, the enhancement of the riparian buffer enhances indeed the existing vegetated slope to the watercourse and will provide additional treatment and protection. The fourth criterion is irreversible and irretrievable loss of wetland or watercourse resources, which would be caused by the proposed regulated activity, and the section goes on, but there's been established that there's no impact, ergo, no irreversible and irretrievable loss. This is attested to by Davison and Logan. The fifth criterion, the character and degree interference with safety, health, or reasonable use of the property. The proposed activity represents a conventional enhancement to residential property. It has been described by now a slew of engineers as stable and meeting engineering standards. And the final criterion is impacts of the proposed regulated activity on wetlands or watercourses outside the area for which the activity is proposed, etc. And the response to that is there is none. So consequently, it is submitted, you are the commission, I am not, but it is submitted that the substantial body of evidence against your criteria results in only one conclusion, which is that we have met the standards and demonstrated our eligibility for the permit. I must say a word about the environmental interventions. I've stated this briefly at the last meeting, but I'll summarize a bit more expansively. The environmental interveners have completely failed to meet their individual burdens of proof of establishing the reasonable likelihood of unreasonable pollution to natural resources of the state of Connecticut within this commission's jurisdiction. This failure extends from the content of their respective petitions to the absent within this hearing of any evidence, much less substantial evidence. And the content of each petition is inadequate to support the intervention requests. In 2013, the legislature amended 22A19 to codify the specific requirements that must be in an intervention petition as stated by the Connecticut Supreme Court in Nizardo versus State Traffic Commission, 259 Connecticut 131. Under Connecticut General Statutes 22A19A subsection 2, specific factual allegations are required setting forth the nature of the alleged unreasonable harm. The intervention petition must contain specific factual allegations setting forth the environmental issue that the intervener intends to raise. These petitions do not meet the standards. They are general. They allege pollution without any evidence to support them. And in my discussion of what constitutes substantial evidence, you can readily conclude that they have not met their burden, not within the four corners of their petitions and not within the extent of this hearing. Based on all of that, respectfully, the applicant has established its eligibility for the permit. If you want to know more about the technique of adjusting the wall in the alternative that the applicants have presented, Please permit Mr. Priscola to have that conversation with you now. Thank you.
Yes, Commissioner Basserman, the material regarding the deconstruction or the construction of the wall is in the Dropbox. Does any commissioner have follow-up questions for Mr. Purdy regarding that exhibit?
This is Commissioner Papantonis. I don't have any follow-up questions, but I do want to say that I have an open mind in this case and that I will read every case that Attorney Shansky has cited before I make my decision.
Thank you. Back to the construction activity.
This
Go ahead.
Commissioner Begemon, for Mr. Preddy, I think Jamie had said in a staff report that maybe we need more sequence of a sequence of construction for what's happening with taking the wall down, and maybe there's more information needed about with a graded slope.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, are you looking at the updated staff report from yesterday or the previous staff report? What's the date at the bottom of the staff report?
I'm not looking at it right now.
Okay, so I'll just recap kind of the things that I outlined. So there were revised plans submitted, I
Can
think
you pull it
Friday.
up, Jamie?
I'm sorry?
Can you pull it up?
Yes. And this kind of brings up the question. I just want to confirm. It seems pretty straightforward, but that the revised plans submitted on Friday are the preferred plans that the applicant is looking to seek approval for. So these revised plans should have a brief construction sequence and then a separate sheet going over some of the details on the revised wall.
If you're asking me, I would defer to Mr. Preddy.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, is everyone seeing a site plan?
Yes.
Okay, so here's the revised site plan. They did update the call out portion of existing retaining wall encroachment to be relocated approximately 25 plus or minus linear feet in future once permission is granted by the owners of 34 Howard Ave. Retaining wall to be lowered by courses as necessary to coordinate with proposed lower grades. Max retaining wall height to be 2.9 feet. See detail sheet. So before I jump over there, we also have this brief construction sequence outlining the proposed work. And don't want to cut everyone's ability off to read it, but I'll hop over the third
Commissioner
plan.
Basserman, Jamie, you're referring to Exhibit 77?
77, and now I'm on Exhibit 78. And if you guys want more details, then I would suggest that you ask that of the applicant. We've got the existing conditions of the retaining wall and the proposed conditions of the retaining wall. And you can see the different courses and top of wall heights with spot elevations near the base of the wall.
This is Commissioner Boda. It seems like if there was a revision submitted on Friday, perhaps Mr. Preddy could quickly review those changes that were made.
I can. Jim Preddy, Criscolo Engineering. So one of the questions was, how was the wall going to be lowered? Well, we provided the an outline of the sequence, and then we provided. I actually took the time to look at the elevations of the different courses, and figured out how to step the block to coordinate with the wall, the grades that we need behind the wall to meet the zoning requirements. And that's what you see. That's what this enlarged plan you see here. The one to the left was what exists now, and this is how we're proposing to lower that. And it shows the steps of how it will be lowered, because that was a question that was raised before. If you scroll down, also I revised the detail that we had shown before was a generic detail from the block manufacturer that showed, you know, typical installation. I modified the detail to more closely mimic the construction as I understand it from Roy Dunn, showing the concrete backup, the stone behind the wall, the geogrid reinforcement, and showing this being pinned and leveled to the ledge. We also added a strip of landscape stone mulch behind the cap of the wall to ensure that even in frozen conditions of lawn, that the water would have a way to get into the stone section behind the wall. As far as other adds, the other thing is if you could go back to the other plan, Jamie. If you notice that, and it's a graphical thing, but if you notice that on the driveway side, I changed the pattern type so you can clearly see where the driveway before all this happened, where the driveway ended prior, and where the new paver started. Because there seems to be some at some point there seemed to be a confusion on whether this whole thing was built recently or not, and that paver driveway, even before January of last year when the patio was built, that paver driveway existed up into that line where the retaining wall starts. So I changed the pattern there to clarify. I think that was all as far as plan changes.
This is Commissioner Begman. A question about, so where the cars stop, there's no retaining wall that's level basically with the ground?
Yeah, well, it slopes toward the road, but yes. This is where they stop now, is where that line is.
And Commissioner Begman, just a question. I know this isn't zoning, but what would prevent a car from driving too far onto the patio?
Well, we are installing a fence at the end of the pavers that we actually this limit of paving is actually pulled back from what's there now. So we pulled back the paving considerably and added a fence along that edge of the pavement, so they could only go a few feet past the house after this gets revised.
This Commissioner Begman, now you have me more confused. A few feet past the house. So my concern is that if there's increased weight from a car, they're engineered in a certain way to be able to hold the weight, retaining walls. And so that's the concern. The other concern is that people just don't drive too far and like go down the bank into the.
No, I understand. So at the edge, the north edge, I would say, of the patio, there is indication of a fence there. So a car would only be able to pull just partially back behind the house. The intention of this was to be able to unload groceries into the back of the house instead of going up the front stairs. But and at the point where the car could possibly be, the retaining wall is 2 feet or less there. And we did ask that question of the structural engineer, and he did not have a concern.
Any other commission questions for Mr. Pretty?
This Commissioner Begman, I noticed that there's now going to be an aluminum wall or some sort of aluminum wall fence that goes around the retaining wall.
No, that was on there before. I just clarified the call out to note that it wasn't a solid fencing. It's an open fencing on that. It's just it's just a safety to keep the dog from going over the wall.
This Commissioner Papantonis, I have a question now. All right, so we've heard from Mr. Sorry, my notes are all over the place right now. But we just heard about which way the water goes now, and this is a different plan. So what, if anything, does this plan do to what we just heard about which way the water goes?
The water will still go directly toward the back. What this does, by providing more sod area, more topsoil, more plantings than was originally planned, will actually provide more opportunity for water absorption by the extended vegetation.
This is Commissioner Begemon, another question. Typically an 8 by, this is a question for Jamie, typically an 8 by 10 shed roof doesn't need to have any sort of drainage demarked on a plan.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent, that hasn't been the commission. I haven't seen that previously be required by the commission.
Thank you.
This is Commissioner Basserman. Any other thing for Mr. Preddy?
Mr. Peretti, Commissioner Goklowski, one quick question. How far back is the, where is the patio going to be start, and where's the driveway going to end? I'm looking at 41.2, and then I see a gate going into the paver patio. Is the driveway going to be extended going back to 41.5?
The pavers are actually, they're much farther past that, yeah, but we're bringing them back to where it says 41.5. That's correct, and that's where the fence will be.
Okay, so the driveway is going to go. The length of the driveway is going to go right up to that 41.5. So I understand.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Bassman, anything else?
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I might just ask the commissioners, do you have any questions regarding the revision from the original plan to what is being proposed now as far as the retaining wall modifications being proposed? Or do you feel like that's satisfactorily been addressed on the record?
This is Commissioner Bassman. I think that with the presentation of the new material, addressing the questions raised at the last meeting with the public hearing, it would appear that those questions have been addressed. Commissioners have had a chance to review that material, and not hearing any further questions for Mr. Preddy, I would assume at this point that the record on this amendment is complete. This is Commissioner Bassman. Attorney Shansky, does that conclude the presentation this evening, and are we ready to move on?
We're ready to move on, subject to later rebuttal, but thank you.
Okay, we now open it up to the registered interveners for their presentation this evening.
Thank you, Commissioner Basserman. Keith Ainsworth, representing the interveners. So I have with me this evening Mr. Ascatino, who you saw before. He is a structural engineer. Mr. Rob Sonicson, who is a professional engineer, and Rob Russo, who is a soil scientist, as well as Sophia Nuri, who is representing my clients as the intervener. I'd like to start off by just making a few comments of my own, and I'll try to be as brief as possible. I do respect what you're trying to do in expediting the matter. So I noticed that the new plans are yet another set of plans, and that the comments about the drainage done by the peer reviewer were showing a pre-existing drainage pattern based on the current pattern of pavers, and then shows and then make some assumptions about drainage going into into the subsurface. But when you remove more pavers, you're going to have more infiltration, just as Mr. Preddy just said, more opportunity for water absorption, which means more water getting down beneath and going toward fissures in the rock, which is a transmission pathway to my client's basement. And that is relevant to your jurisdiction because if water that naturally flowed through soil or across soil down to the river was being filtered by vegetation, it's now getting filtered through a basement where it would be likely to certainly pick up more contaminants, if anything. And then because that water, all the water that flows around here goes down to that wetland. So I think that's an interesting point. Now, none of the cases that Attorney Shansky cited stand for the proposition that a commission must approve a permit where someone has deprived you of the ability to see the existing conditions. You were never provided with existing conditions. You're provided with the current post-construction conditions. And there's a difference because the pre-existing conditions would have allowed you and your staff and the interveners to see what those conditions were so we could verify where water went and where it goes now. And yet we're being deprived of that. And I think it's really interesting that the applicant is now sort of faulting us and saying, oh, well, they have no evidence. Well, yes, half of the evidence that we would be using is now covered by an illegal construction. And so to say that somehow they've met their burden of providing access, no, they've actually deprived you of what you would normally have access to and what we would normally have access to. So all of those cases that she cited, I don't think any of them have anything to do with finished construction. And therefore, none of them really apply because this is a different situation. And so the suggestion that you have no choice but to approve, no, you actually have another choice. The other choice is to say, provide us with the opportunity that we should have had to review the site before it was altered in the extreme. And so, yes, denying the application and requiring removal and then a proper application is absolutely a rational, evidence-based decision that could be made. And it's substantial evidence because you've all seen the wall, you've seen the patio. That's pretty damn substantial, frankly. That is evidence in the record that could be relied upon to make a decision contrary to the one that Attorney Shansky is suggesting that you have no choice but to make, which I think is actually borders on arrogant to insist that you have to approve or that you have there's no other rational choice. There is a rational choice, which is to say, do the right thing. And toward that end, my clients have just completed the trial of this matter yesterday. We will be finally or orally arguing the matter before the judge for closing arguments tomorrow. And we fully expect that there will be an order to take down this wall and the patio. I have absolutely no doubt in my mind that's where that order is going to be headed. And so to also suggest that there's been no evidence that we've proved our case, if Attorney Shansky had been present in court, I think she'd have a different opinion.
Yes, Commissioner Bassman, let's not get down the court road. Let's stay within the jurisdiction that this commission has, which is wetlands and water courses. You've brought some people here tonight to support your case. We'd like to kind of move in that direction as quickly as we can.
Okay, so then I'll just do a couple comments about the test pit. And I was going to ask about, did someone else invite the WEO to appear? I think there have been lots of new materials, the most significant of which is the application from 22 Howard Avenue, which is pending before this commission, with the same contractor on the same road for the same type of wall, used in the same way, yet it was designed by an engineer and it used 3 layers of geogrid for the same size wall. This one is proposing 2. And I think if there's any fairness, you should be treating the same wall the same way. They're not proposing the same, the same design elements that that apparently the contractor knows how to do, but didn't do in this instance. And then finally, the geodesign peer review says the wall appears to be constructed in a workmanlike manner, and the wall was constructed in a satisfactory manner. That seems odd because it really doesn't seem to be an indication of workmanlike construction or satisfactory to build without permits and to build a wall across a property line. That indicates that there's perhaps a lack of attention to detail and or a lack of credibility. And credibility is what we're really being asked to rely on here when we have all these presentations by folks who don't allow you to see their test bit. They didn't even allow us to see their test bit. We were present that day because we invited them onto our property at 34. And then when they did their test bit, they put a tent over it so my clients couldn't see from their property because they didn't invite us over to their property. In any event, I will now move on to Mr. Ascatino and ask him to make his comments if he is present this evening.
Yes, I am.
Thank you, sir.
Can everybody hear me?
Perfectly.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. The first comment I want to piggyback on the attorney just said. I mean, there was a comment that by the applicant, the attorney, that says the engineer has stated that meets engineering standards. All of the documents that I've reviewed, as it was just said, they kind of say, well, you know, it looks like it should be been built correctly. None of them have made any statement saying that they meet engineering standards or the building code requirements. And I want to be clear, none of them. I am a professional engineer. I write professional reports all the time. And that is the most important thing you put in a document if you want to certify something is it's the fact that it is my professional opinion based on calculations, which I don't believe any of them have done. This wall meets the state of Connecticut building code loading requirements. None of those documents are showing any of that information. They're very vague. And, you know, it probably clearly saw, because if I was in their shoes and I didn't know the actual truth, I would have to provide such a vague statement because otherwise, you know, I would be lying. So that is one of the issues. The other thing that I want to point out is that there's been a lot of talk about water shedding off. That patio does not pitch mostly towards the rear. It's warped. So if you look at the grades from the plans that we've been looking at it, the water tends to shed. It's almost like when you create a cricket, the water doesn't, while it goes down in the rear, the cricket will tend to push all the water towards the wall. And then they're talking about the fact that a loose block that has 3/8 of an inch hollow joints, and the inside of this block is hollow cores that somehow is going to keep the water from flowing down the wall and wash all the way down the end of that wall towards the wetlands. That water is going to get inside that wall, is going to drop down. And nobody talks about the fact that if you look at the geology of that rock below it, the rock is not a uniform sealed surface. There are specific crevices, fissures that go directly on an angle diagonally into the property of 34 in the basement. And I have seen videos of water literally flowing like streams coming through those cracks. Now, they talk about the fact that they have concrete.
This Commissioner Basserman, are you talking about this particular property with the comment that you just made, or
Yes.
some other property?
No, I'm talking about this specific property.
Is that in evidence?
Which part?
The video that you said you just said.
I don't know if Sophia Nori or Stephen have provided that in evidence, but I have seen a video of water flowing underneath the wall through cracks, just like a stream.
We did submit that to the record, and we can play it later.
Thank you.
All right. One last thought. There's also been a lot of discussion about this water supposedly flowing on top of this impermeable surface and getting down towards the rear of the property. And yet there are two weep holes at the bottom of that wall that show no sign of water flowing. So unless water somehow it's totally dissipating and disappearing, and that pipe doesn't show, you have all that surface on that entire patio, and none of that water, or very minimal water, comes through those peepholes. The reason being is it's flowing sideways into that wall, it's getting through the cracks of the stone, and it's all coming through the basement of 34, and then it goes towards the rear, because the rear foundation wall of 34 does not have ledge. Ledge slopes towards the wetland. So it flows underneath that foundation wall and it goes towards the wetlands. But right now what they've done is they've deviated most of that water through 34 basement, then going through the rear. And that is fairly evident, because if they're talking about it's being drained, and then those weep holes should have shown something. None of these weep holes are showing any major flowing. So the water just can't disappear. But we do know where it comes. We've seen video, and there is a video, maybe you can look at it, where that water actually is flowing through that basement. So we know this is true evidence. I don't know if you have any questions.
Jamie, is that video an exhibit number?
It is. It's exhibit number 80. And if you would like, I can play it.
It's very short.
Just bear with me a minute.
And it has sound.
Is everyone seeing the video or no? Or what looks like a video clip?
I see a picture. I don't see a
Okay.
video designation.
You now seeing
Oh,
the
there we
video?
go.
Okay.
There we go.
Now, that should be your weep holes. Your weep holes are into the basement of 34.
And this is Commissioner Bassman, on a site map, can you indicate where the location of that video took place?
Yeah, I could give you an approximate location if we look at a map.
Jamie, can you help me here?
Yeah, I'm looking for the survey of 34 Howard.
Mr. Chairman, who took the video? Perhaps they are the best person to talk about what they were looking at.
Well, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chairman, I saw the location in the basement, so I have approximate location. I'm pretty confident that I know where that is.
And can we point that out on the map that I'm viewing now?
Yeah, okay. I think we want to scroll that up. That's the original condition. Let's see. I would say roughly where it says masonry block retaining wall. You know where that arrow is pointing to, that next to the 55, roughly approximately that location. Or slightly, closer to the corner, give or take 4 or 5 feet at approximately that area, 5 or 6 feet.
And Jamie, the wetland is where?
The water course runs approximately along the rear property lines. So here's 34 Howard Ave, their deck, the retaining wall, subject to the application, and the limits of the wetland identified on 30 Howard Ave.
Yeah,
you go back to that other map.
Yeah, approximately halfway where that planting is being proposed is where that location is. So the water flows into 34 and then turns straight towards the wetlands beyond 34. And that's a fact.
Okay. Anything else, sir?
Unless you have any other questions, if I have any questions, otherwise I'm done.
Any other questions from the commission? Okay, Attorney Ainsworth, who's next?
Thank you, sir. Mr. Sonicson, you're up.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Rob Sonicson. I'm a registered professional engineer. I work at Waldo and Associates in Guilford, Connecticut. I'm just going to talk about the changes that were made in the 4/18/24 plans. And you know that the drawings have been changing since September 25th, 2023. And the proposed applications morphed and changed over all of these hearings. For example, the drawings from 9/25/23 to 2/14/24 indicated clearly on the and this is critically important as far as I'm concerned, indicated that there would be a 4-inch PVC pipe with gravity flow to an outlet at the in the rear immediately behind the wall. The 4/18 plans now have changed and they show no controlled drainage behind the wall. It's all just stone. The reason that you put the PVC pipe in is because the water drains directly down from the stone and it seeks the PVC, perforated PVC pipe, and you direct it to where you want it to go. In this case, without a PVC pipe, the water goes down and hits the bedrock and it flows through crevices as it may and makes its way out. One of the things that is critically important is that storm drainage be controlled in this kind of an installation. And without that drainage pipe behind the wall, and the way that they talk about drainage pipe at the bottom of the wall, those pipes do not run parallel. They don't pick up the water from the entire length of the wall. They only can pick up a small amount that may drain to the far corner. And that's not consistent with the standard drainage design for these kind of block walls.
Excuse me, Commissioner Papantonis. Mr. Sonicson, could you say that again? I'm trying to understand what you're saying.
Okay. We can't, if you go back to any of the drawings previously that have been before the commission, they're cross-section drawings of the proposed conditions that they were going to have after the wall had been modified. All of those drawings show a 4-inch PVC drainage pipe behind the wall. Here's the example. You can see it clearly on this detail. Every single drawing that has come before you until tonight shows that 4-inch diameter perforated pipe, gravity flow to outlet. That has been removed from the proposed drawings. And from a technical perspective, there's serious problems under the existing conditions. There's flooding in the basement next door. Now you're not going to put a drainage pipe, which would in fact collect any water that leaks from behind the wall and discharge it to the far end of the wall, and you're allowing it to drain into the rock and across into the basement. And Attorney Ainger mentioned the fact that all the previous plans have shown multiple geogrid layers. The current cross-section in the 4/18/24 plan shows only one geogrid layer. I think that might have been an oversight because there are in fact two that were constructed, but that's something that I just wanted to point out. There's another interesting thing on this drawing. If you look up at the top, at the back of the capstone, there's a note that says joint seal where grade meets back of wall. That's an extremely important component in a wall like this, because when water flows across pavement and hits a joint with another material, the water seeks to go down the face of the other material. And these details anticipated that. It obviously wasn't included in the original construction because there is a lot of water leaking through the face of the existing wall. This note would have addressed that to some degree, but it's been removed from the current cross-section plan. And we do know that up until January of 2024, the wall was to be moved back from the property line a distance equal to its height. And the 2/14/24 plans proposed that the wall remain at the property line. And I know that Mr. Preddy put in a sequence of construction that said we're gonna disassemble this wall from the backside. We're not going to go onto the adjacent property to do the work. But as a practical matter, these walls are built from the down gradient side. The construction that took place was done by workers standing on the property of 34 Howard Avenue without any permission and building a wall on the property line, and in some cases across the property line, partially onto 34 Howard Avenue. I don't understand how you're going to be able to do all of this deconstruction and modification without going onto the property at 34 Howard Avenue. But that, I guess, would remain to be seen if it in fact was approved. Then I looked at the proposed elevations, top of wall, bottom of wall, because there's spot elevations at the bottom of the wall adjacent to a lot of the top of wall locations. I know there's a note on the plan that says that the wall is going to be 2.9 feet, no higher. But my measurements show that on the plan that's before you, the top of the wall to the bottom of the wall, differentials range from 2.6 feet, that's good, that's less than 3 feet, to 3.6 feet, which is 0.6 of a foot higher than the 3 feet. So they would have to go back and get a zoning permit from the zoning commission, and the section of the wall that's over 3 feet would have to be offset from the property line, from along the setback line, by the height of the proposed wall. Just a note, that's kind of a minor note, but I looked at the plans. There was a call out way over on the far eastern side of the prior plans that said 3-foot aluminum fence, typical. The thing that caught my attention was that the new plans that just came in actually calls it out right next on the top of the wall, right adjacent to Howard Avenue. It had never been shown with that specificity as being going along the entire length. And it just says it's a typical, and it doesn't really show if it stops someplace and continues. You have to assume it's going to be along the entire top of the wall. Those were my comments on the revised plans. We really didn't have a lot of time. I'm glad I had a chance to review them. It was a lot of changes that happened very abruptly in very short period of time. It wasn't just small changes. Particularly the drainage one was one that was very alarming to me. So thank you for your attention, and I can answer any questions that you may have, or I'll turn it back over.
Commissioner Bassman, I'll turn it over to the commission for questions for Mr. Sonicson.
This is Commissioner Bergman. can somebody point out where Mr. Sonicson sees the 3.6 foot versus
Yeah.
the 2.6?
I can tell you. There's a 40.1 on the top of the wall. Right.
Here or over here?
Actually, I think that the 3.6 might be 40.1 to 36.5. Wait a minute. Yeah, 41 to 36.5, the bottom of the wall. This is right adjacent to the deck behind the 34 Howard Avenue. So we have a top of wall, and the X where the spot is right near where it transitions, but my measurement there showed that it was 3.6 feet.
This is Commissioner Bassman. When you say your measurement, are you comparing plans, or was there an actual empirical measurement?
No, I measured the difference between what's shown as the top of the wall and the spot grade at the bottom of the wall, and subtracted it, and it came out 3.6.
But I'm saying you actually were on site when you did that, or you did it by the plans?
No, I used this plan.
Yeah. Okay.
This is the only plan that shows what the new top of walls are going to be. It just it just came out on Friday. So
okay, thank you.
Had a chance. Thanks.
This is Commissioner Papantonis. Mr. Sonicson, you said that you were concerned about the drainage changes, and could you tell us what, if any, effect that has on the wetlands?
The drainage for the wall needs to run parallel to the back of the wall for the length of the wall to a point of discharge. The logical point of discharge would be the low point, which is at the northwest corner of the wall. So the drainage would run parallel to the wall that runs along 34 Howard Avenue, and also would run parallel along the wall that runs on the north side. And you could put some intermediate drainage outlets on it, but the logical place to bring it would be down to the bottom, and then it would drain toward the wetland. But that would change the way that potentially change the way the amount of water that would drain out the back of the wall and down the embankment. And it certainly would relieve any hydrostatic pressure that builds up behind the wall, which is really the reason that you're putting the drainage in there.
All right, so this is Commissioner Papantonis again. Are you saying that this plan doesn't do what it does it do it, or does it not do what you're saying should be the way the water should drain? I don't understand.
I'm sorry. If we could go down to the cross-section detail. This section only has, well, it has the mulch is changed from, this is a side, I'm digressing here just for a second. But I am a little bit concerned about it. It used to show mulch there on the top, but now it shows landscape stone mulch, but there's supposed to be plants that are planted in it. And I don't really know how the plants are going to flourish if they're planted in stone. That's kind of up for a landscaper to figure out. But what's going to happen is that's highly permeable material. Any water that flows along the wall or sheet flows down across the patio will run into this landscape stone mulch buffer and drain directly down into the crushed and through the mulch into the crushed stone, and it will continue going directly down. until it hits the ledge profile. You can see the approximate ledge profile at the bottom. And from that point, it's going to find its way by gravity to wherever it wants to go. What's happening now, based on our observation, is that some of that water is making its way through voids in the rock and off toward Howard Avenue, and that's caused an increase in leakage in their basement. Without the pipe, it just goes straight down, and then it's on its own to find its way wherever it's going to go. With the pipe is much more, carries the water much more efficiently. And so any water that gets down to that pipe goes through the perforations and flows down gradient to a controlled point of discharge. So there's no controlled point of discharge with this plan. And a controlled point of discharge is a very important thing for both for the stability of the wall and for the control of stormwater runoff.
Is Commissioner Basserman, anything else for Mr. Sonicson? Do we have one more presenter this
Jamie Frederick
evening?
and the agent. Before we move on, I do think that it was a good point raised about the stone mulch and the growing medium for the proposed shrubs, and have the applicant speak to that.
This is Commissioner Brass, can we hold off on that, Jamie? If there's one more, I'd like to get all of the intervener responses, and then I think we need to follow up on giving the applicant an opportunity to respond.
Okay.
Okay.
Is there an additional presenter this evening for the intervener?
Yes, Keith Ainsworth for the intervener. Mr. Russo from CLA Engineers, if you're here, begin your comments.
Good evening. My name is Bob Russo. I'm a certified soil scientist with CLA Engineers in Norwich, Connecticut. I would like to just carry on a little bit from what Mr. Sonicson just discussed, and first mention that there's a lot of information that's come in recently. It's my understanding that in public hearings, in the case of a public hearing, the Branford Inland Wetland Commission's policy is to get materials 5 days in advance so that there can be review by both the commission and interested parties. As staff mentioned earlier, there were 3 documents that came in just in the past couple of days. And as Mr. Sonicson mentioned, and I think was mentioned by others, the plan itself came in on Friday. I do wish that I had had a little bit more time to look at this plan. I'll just point out one thing on the plan that is in front of the commission right now. There is a proposed straw wattles to be installed down slope of the construction. In this case, you see that those straw wattles are going over an area that's called shallow ledge and dirt. Straw wattles need to be staked into the ground, and I would say that alternative means of erosion and sedimentation control should be specified there, because I doubt that stakes can be driven into that ledge that are going to hold straw wattles in place and keep them functional. I would also note that only very recently did the results of the test pit that was done in the patio become available. I really haven't had time to review those with regard to the construction of the patio as it exists now and the modifications that are proposed, to see if it's consistent with the hydrology that they're describing, and B, if there's further potential for impact based on what the results of that test pit are. It's just information that has arrived at the last minute that I haven't really had a chance to assess. just recently, and the new information, I believe the applicant's team has clarified that the pavers are almost all impervious. Earlier in presentations, the applicant's engineer said, no, they're somewhat pervious, but the reviewing consultants have said, no, they're really impervious. I hope that that's now clarified, and would like to get a chance, although I know the public hearing will need to be closed, to relook at this based on an understanding of how they've described the pavers themselves that are being used. I just will wrap up quickly. I feel like this is very much at the same place where it was at the last meeting, and that is that they went ahead and built this. There wasn't an application before the commission. Commission didn't have a chance to walk the site. The commission didn't have a chance to hire experts if they so desired. And now the commission and the consultants for the neighbors are operating with a dearth of information on this project. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Bassman. Commissioner, this is the opportunity to address Mr. Russo with any questions you have. If not, if there are no questions, then I'm going to ask Attorney Ainsworth whether that concludes the presentation from the interveners this evening.
Keith Ainsworth here for the interveners. I would just like to give Sophia Nori an opportunity to address the commission briefly.
This is Commissioner Begemon. Before we do that, can I ask Mr. Russo a question?
Absolutely.
In terms of not being able to see the test pits, or to have time to have thought about the materials that are now thought to be, behind the walls. Can you tell us how it would affect the wetlands, depending on what was there?
So essentially the question is, how is water going to move through or around this wall? And what is the travel path of water that hits the ground surface to the wetlands? And that is what I would like to have had the time to decide, to analyze based on the results of the test pits, of the single test pit. It's always important when you're looking at work in an upland review area to see how the water that falls from the sky is going to travel through the upland review area to the wetland. And that's what I would have wanted to study in greater detail.
This is Commissioner Begemon again. If the water is going more, let's say, to 34 and into their basement and then to the wetlands, can you speak to how that would affect the wetlands?
Well, there are a couple different things that you would want to look at. If it was coming into 34 into the basement and there was channelized flow, then it's possible that you could have erosion in the basement and water flowing out of whatever means out the basement door. It's possible that you could be contributing sediments. It's possible that you could be contributing, runoff from whatever's stored in the basement as well, that the owners would have to then control and deal with.
This is Commissioner Bassman. To that point, we've certainly seen presentation of water alleged to have leave 38 and enter 34. Do we have evidence of leaving 34 and going to the wetland?
I do not have that evidence. I don't know if others have seen that or not.
Suppose I could ask my clients, but from this is Keith Ainsworth, but from a logical standpoint, the water has to go somewhere, and the land slopes very steeply behind both of these properties. So I'll ask Mr. Russo, just given what you know about the topography, if the water went into the basement, does it go anywhere but to the wetlands?
No, that water would end up in the wetlands.
This is Commissioner Bassman as a follow-up. Doesn't that depend on the permeability of the soil between 34 and the wetland?
Commissioner Basserman, yes, you're correct. When I said it would end up in the wetland, I didn't distinguish between surface flow and subsurface flow. It's possible that it would enter the soil and flow into the wetland as subsurface discharge, or it's possible it could run over the surface and enter as a surficial discharge.
And back to this Commissioner Bassman, back to my original question, we do not have evidence of any surface water going to the wetland? Has that been observed? Has that been photoed? Has that been documented?
I can ask my client who lives in the structure, and she could tell you. Dr. Nuri, could you comment on where that water that comes into the basement goes?
So there is drainage holes in the floor of the basement. I don't know if they where they go. When we purchased the home, there were some.
Have you seen water flowing out the back door, or anything that on the surface? Or
I've seen the water flow into the pipe that's in the on the floor of our basement. I don't know where the outlet is. But presumably it's downhill somewhere. And then I can share a video of some of the weeping that comes out of the wall on our side, which I also presume goes into the wetlands.
Mr. Bassman, anything else, Attorney Ainsworth?
Okay. Well, and I'll just ask my client to, I think Mr. Russo's done, unless there's other questions for him. And I'll ask Dr. Nuri to complete her brief comments to the commission.
Thanks, everybody. So I'm Sophia Nori. I am one of the environmental interveners from 34 Howard. And we've spent quite a bit of time on this application. I was reflecting back on how many meetings all of us have attended, and we've attended 12 meetings on this with 3 public hearings and 1 site walk. And so collectively, each of the commissioners have spent around 25 hours reviewing this application, and there's over 90 distinct documents in the notice of violation and in the application file. So there's a lot to go through. I try to review everything in the file, and we understand. The last time I spoke with you, I know there's obviously we have a lot of hurt that this happened when we weren't in the home. And though that sucks, I can separate that and also think about this in as logical a manner as I can as an intervener. And again, I understand that people sometimes do things and we need to find a way forward. I understand that we have to figure out a solution to all of this too. And I looked through everything that I could. I also looked through what Marjorie Shansky had also shared today too, which was, the factors that influenced the decision as well for the interveners, for the application as well, and how we're all supposed to think about, making these decisions. And, one thing that was said is that, our regulations don't factor in intent. But credibility does factor into it. We have to also have trust that the facts that we're being presented with are actually facts. And the concern I have is that there's been a lot of inconsistencies with what has been shared in the application. And unfortunately, even after 11 months of these meetings, the first meeting that we all came to was April 11th, 2023, or sorry, in June of May 11th of 2023. And so there's been four different plans. We're looking at these new ones, and still there's a lot of inconsistencies. The first one that was mentioned is the fact that there was a test pit. We were present, and I did take a photo, so I can share a photo of what the test pit size actually looked like if I can share my screen. Would that be okay? Because I do think it's relevant that we know the size of it.
I guess we would also include that as an exhibit, if it's gonna be shared this evening.
Okay.
1 minute.
Thank you, Jamie.
All right, you should be good.
Can people see this?
Yes,
So this is the size of the test pit. It was 2 pavers by 2 pavers. I'm not even sure if it was 2 feet by 2 feet by the size of it. And no one was able to see what was in it, what occurred out of it. We've gotten descriptions. I just think it's a little funny that, you know, Jamie wasn't invited to look at it and there's no other pictures of what it actually looked like inside. Also, like, it is really confusing what's occurring with the drainage as well, because again, some people are saying that it's impervious, some people are saying it's pervious. Then some people said that there's polymerized sand, so nothing can get through it. But then they're saying that it retains water. Though, you know, their structural engineer and our structural engineer also shared that there's no mortar between the blocks. Like, it's an interlocking block retaining wall, and it's supposed to just drain freely. So it's super confusing to me, like, how exactly this is draining. And I think what's also concerning to me, and maybe I'm starting to understand a little bit, but like, parts of the wall don't seem to weep. And then this is literally happening in our basement. And then they're saying that the water flows down towards the wetland. And so they showed that, like, red arrow, right? That, like, the water just goes down towards the wetland. But I'm not sure if that's correct, because there is weeping in the wall. We do see it, and it's coming onto our property. And I'm not sure why, but it does actually drain onto our property. So to show you this, it's weeping between the blocks onto our property, which is, and then this water presumably also goes to the wetlands. I'm not sure. So I just don't understand how it drains. And I'm not sure if we'll ever understand it, is the problem, because none of us have seen what the inside of the wall looks like. I mean, we've been through 11 months of this and people still can't agree on if it's pervious or impervious. Another piece too is, like, when we were asked as interveners, do we have any other questions to submit? We submitted as many questions as we could to get answers. And then, you know, Attorney Shansky and Jim Preddy provided responses. And one of the questions was that in Dunn's photo roll, it's clear that there's extra pictures of the way that how it was constructed. And then they said that there's no further pictures, but you can clearly tell that there's more pictures. They're just not being provided to us. So if you look in here, like, yeah, he showed a picture. Sorry. Okay. So he showed a picture of this, right? Which is the post excavation. This is our side yard. And then you can see that there's more photos in here. You can see it up here too. There's more photos, but they said that there was no more that he was going to provide us. And so it just makes me feel like we don't have all of the data that they have, and they're providing selective amounts of data that support their thesis. And also, again, I'm still confused about how much geogrid that this retaining wall is supposed to have. I understand that the geogrid is supposed to provide some structural integrity to the wall, but they also said that, they said that there was 2, but in their cross section of the wall that Mr. Preddy completed, there's only 1. And so, like, in the proposed plan. So I guess I'm confused about how much geogrid is there supposed to be in it. Is it providing some structural integrity? Because they did just say that they are planning to drive cars on it. So is there supposed to be 1? Is there supposed to be 2? Is there supposed to be 3? I feel like I have no idea about that. And I feel like it's kind of important to know that. And then the other piece too is, like, going back to the heights of the wall. So let me see if I can find it, but their detail of the actual like updated wall. Let's see. Okay, so it's item 78. I'm just bringing it up.
I can screen share it. I've got it open.
Jamie, I found it. So in this, they're saying that the wall is going to be reduced to 2.9 feet, right? So it's clear that there's certain points on our side of the wall that actually really aren't lowered, which is what, Rob was saying. But also here, this top of wall is 40.1, right? And then the elevation here is 35.2. So it seems like it's like these, I don't understand if these are supposed to be two different walls, but the thing is, functionally, if it's a 5-foot wall, we know that Dunn is constructing a 5-foot wall, 5 to 6 foot wall at 22 Howard Avenue, who have applied for permits, which is good and decent. And they have 3 layers of geogrid. So just because there's this little curvature, does that mean, if it's 5 feet tall collectively, does it not mean that it doesn't need more geogrid than that? So that's a question that I have, and it's just inconsistent because, again, Jim Preddy said that there was 2 layers that he saw, but the detail in here shows just 1. The other piece too that I'm really confused by is just the driving on it, because again, initially they didn't necessarily share that they were going to drive on it. Now they're saying it goes up to here. But what happens if someone just keeps on driving? Like, seriously, do they just fall into the wetlands? Like, what is supposed to keep them from driving over the soil here into the wetland, or onto our side? And then again, I'm just not sure, like that the water, I'm not convinced that we understand enough about the drainage to be able to say that the water straight up isn't going into our basement. And like looking at the regulations, if we go back to this, just like really trying to stick to what we are supposed to be thinking about for the criteria for a decision. We're supposed to think about the purpose for and any feasible and prudent alternatives to the proposed regulated activity. But when, Commissioner Glowkowski asked like 5 times to the applicants, why did they build this? And nobody's told us what it's for or what the purpose was. So how do we know if any feasible and prudent alternatives actually existed? They decided what they wanted to do and then did it. And for all we know, they could have just needed a bigger deck. We don't know if this needed to be built for it. And so now what they're saying is that there's no alternatives because they already built it. And the best thing that we can do is just let them keep it. The other piece too is like, I understand that they said that there's no impacts currently to like that have been observed to the wetlands. I'm still not convinced that they actually proved that there's no long-term impacts if we don't understand how the drainage works and where it's going. So like that part, I'm not totally sure about either. And then just looking back at these things too, like actually potential impacts to properties do matter, like the character and degree of injury to the reasonable use of property, which is caused or threatened. So the threat of it is also a factor for consideration. And unfortunately, we're the owners of the threatened property. And then again, like when it comes to the impacts of the proposed regulated activity on wetlands or watercourses, we're also in an upland review area. And I'm just not sure if they've actually met this, which makes it really hard for us to support the application. The other piece as well is like just stepping back from the actual factors for decision making. I think the other piece that's just really tough in this is like the ethics piece, right? I was reading about why the Wetlands Commission and why wetlands regulations were even founded in the preamble to the regulations. And a lot of it talks about like protecting citizens and that this is something that we should do is protecting the wetlands, right? It's about the ethics of it, trying to do something that's like honorable for the environment. And I'm just worried that this also sets a precedent that, if you have means in this town and wealth, that you can do what you'd like and then throw money at the problem after, hire 3 lawyers and get a permit. And And I'm not sure that's the precedent what we want to set, that like you can just keep pushing at it, do 11 months of meetings, and eventually somebody will give you something. I also just think that, like, again, this is like ill-gotten in some ways. And I understand that they're trying to make things right, but honestly, it comes off as like performing responsibility instead of taking responsibility when there's so many inconsistencies to what they're saying. And so it just makes it really tough for us to actually support what's happening here. And I don't know if another meeting is going to give us more information. Every meeting, there's so many questions, and I'm not sure we're getting any closer. And so like we give our consent to the removal of the wall and for them to just restore it and build it correctly so that we know it's actually in it.
Thank you, Ms. Norrie. Attorney Ainsworth, any other comments before we move on to members of the public?
No, I don't believe so. So, thank you very much.
Chairman, just a reminder, there are 2 other interveners.
Oh, are they on the call?
I'm not sure. They think they were at the beginning.
Well, I looked, I didn't recognize any of the parties that are still here. Any other intervener on the call tonight that would like to speak?
I think both Lisa and Danny are here.
Hi, I'm Lisa Licio, and I live at 26 Howard Avenue. And I have been on every meeting except for one. I do have to say that, and I do thankfully and respectfully appreciate all the information from so many professionals that we have on the call. It still doesn't change the fact that what has been done with the wall has, in fact, in my opinion, affected the wetlands and the brook. And I'll leave my personal issue out of it. The brook has been something that is a problem. And, I was told that what I was speaking to was because it was further back, but the reason why things were happening is because of that particular section in the brook. So I think that it's really important that we do not discard some of the comments that I've been making over the past year. Also, I see very clearly the right and the wrong with not having permits. The drainage system, we really don't know what is going on with the drainage system. And I'm not a professional, I'm not an engineer, but I think that you can obviously see that there is definitely drainage issues that are affecting the wetlands. So I am in favor of 34 Howard and their cause in this. And I hope that we can resolve this going forward.
Thank you. And I don't see Coughlin, I think, was on the call, but oh yes. Ms. Coughlin, would you like to make any comment this evening? I can.
Oh, hang on. Okay, you're on. Hi,
Dan Coughlin, intervener. They've covered, shut the lights down, man. Turn them down. I mean, the engineers have covered 90% of what we have to say here. There's just a couple things. When we look at this project at the beginning, we had no water. We had no water flow in the basement. And we had an engineer look at it, structural. We analyzed the foundation. And after the wall, their work was complete, we have water coming into the basement. I mean, those are facts. Where the water's coming from and the wall construction and all that, we have water coming in. It does come into the basement. with the basement area and the foundation, the footing being in the back, the water really can't travel over the surface to get to the wetlands. It goes in, and maybe subsurfacely gets to the wetlands through. But because of the foundation on the back wall, it can't just flow to the wetland. So it sits in there. It sits in there in puddles, and then eventually it'll go into the subsurface, and it'll probably get to the wetlands eventually. Structurally down here, it did loosen a lot of. It moved a lot of the soil as it was coming through. It pulled a lot of the soil around the footing, which caused some problems. And we did go in there and we removed the loose pediments, and we tried to support the house to prevent any damage. But nothing was done. Nothing was done to interfere with any of the base foundation or the actual what it was sitting on. With that said, there's got to be some engineering work done in pinning to figure out what's going on with that to do it. On the outside of the foundation, where the wall meets the ground, there was some existing concrete there. There was never really a lot of vegetation there. I know when they put their wall in, they had to have moved whatever was there. They had to have moved it to put their footings on the existing rock, or else you can't pour concrete on dirt. So they did have to remove some of this stuff, and there was some existing concrete in between placed in there. But we just noticed a lot more water flowing after the fact. But with that said, everything on that wall and the water flow, where it comes from, and how you're going to address it, I think once we get the water going to the back, we can figure out the other problem. But we'll see where it goes. That's about it. Thanks.
Thank you, sir.
This Commissioner Papantonis, I have a question for Mr. Coughlin. Mr. Coughlin, where's your house in relation to the house in question?
I'm right downstream. I'm at the last point where the water exits into the sound.
And Commissioner Papantonis again, did you say that you have erosion now that you didn't have before?
There's water. It basically down there, the water down there, because it's rained a lot, there's more water, but it's flowing where it has to flow. There's a big outlet. So there is more water flowing, but that's probably due to the, how much rain we've had. But no, it's basically contained into the area where it's flowing.
All right. Mr. Coughlin, Commissioner Papantonis again. You talked about loosened soil and soil being pulled around from footings. Where are you talking about?
That was at 34, in between 34 and their foundation.
All right. So that was not at your house?
No.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
This is Attorney Shansky. Commissioner Papantonis' questions have now completely confused me about to what property Mr. Coughlin was referring at any time during his testimony. Can we have some clarification on that? And may I ask Ms. Licio a question?
Let's deal with the clarifications from Mr. Coughlin first, since he's still got the mic, so to speak. The issues that you raised, Mr. Coughlin, how much of that was your property versus somewhere else?
I was speaking on the property in question, 34 Howard, which I live down the road, but I was the builder on the house. So I'm very familiar with the construction, and I was the builder that helped them build the house. But I live down, but everything I was saying was in reference to 34.
Thank you for that. Does that help, Attorney Shansky?
To a degree, thank you.
And I think there was another question for someone else.
Yes, please.
Ms. Licio?
Yes. Ms. Licio, do you have a patio?
Yes, I do.
Did you get a permit from the Wetlands Agency for your patio?
I don't recall if I did, but underneath that patio is the brook that is directly the one that we're speaking of. So the brook does go the full length of my property. It goes from Howard Avenue all the way down through my yard.
I think that's outside the realm of the jurisdiction of this commission. Before we turn this over to members of the public who might be interested in speaking, I think we need to give Mr. Preddy an opportunity to address some of the concerns raised by the interveners, and this would be an appropriate time to do that, I believe.
Mr. Chairman, Margie,
yes.
If we may, Mr. Preddy, Mr. Davison, and Mr. Perugini all have comments.
Okay, let's try to be as quick as we can regarding the rebuttal. Mr. Preddy, why don't you go first?
Sure, Jim Preddy, Crisco Engineering again. Just some comments, in response to some of the other comments. The last set of plans that we submitted were in response to comments and questions from the commission at the last time we were here. The drainage, I think we've explained what we believe is going on there. The stone behind the wall is transmitting the water downward, downward vertically and running along the stepped foundation along the 34 side to the low point. I agree with Mr. Sonicson that the low point of the rock behind the wall is at the corner of the retaining wall, and that at that point is actually past the foundation of the neighbor's house. The pipe behind the wall in the earlier cross sections, as I've explained, is that the earlier cross section was a typical detail from the block manufacturer. And what I did was I took that and I revised it to as closely mimic how we believe that the wall was built, to reflect that condition instead of just their standard detail. The construction sequence, there's a comment about how we do it behind the wall. I did ask
Mr. Preddy, this is Commissioner Bassman. Is that pipe removal a detriment to the design, or would it have been helpful if that pipe were included?
the pipe speeds up water flow, but I don't have any doubt that the crushed stone behind the wall is really the key in moving water vertically and laterally here, because it lines up behind both walls.
In follow up, in terms of I guess dissipating the water, I'm not an engineer. I guess I could maybe see that. How about the direction that the flow with a pipe generates, as opposed to just the permeability issue associated with the stone?
So, like I said, the stone allows the water to travel to the lowest point, which is the corner of the retaining wall, which is where those PVC pipes are. Now, we haven't seen much of any water coming out of those PVC pipes, so I don't doubt that there's probably fractures in the stone at that point, that the wall probably, or the water most likely does travel subsurface, as Mr. Russo suggested, down to the wetlands at that point. The construction sequence was asked about, or commented by Mr. Sonicson about not, them constructing it from downhill side. I did ask Mr. Dunn the part of the wall that we're looking to lower, he said that it could all be done from the 38 Howard side. Obviously, when the encroachment gets moved, that's a different story, but I guess we're not supposed to talk about that at this point. The wall height that keeps getting referred to, everyone needs to remember that the wall height in the regulations is the height of the finished grade behind the wall and finished grade in front of the wall, the retained portion of the soil, not the top of the wall. The top of the wall past the finished grade is a curb or a parapet or a fence. It's not part of the definition of a retaining wall, or as part of the height of the retaining wall. The impervious, pervious question keeps coming up about the patio. The patio block manufacturer does say that there is a certain amount of infiltration in the sand between the blocks. It's not a lot. I've said that before. In fact, when I did the runoff calculations to see the difference of the prior condition and now, I assumed that it was all impervious. What is the wetlands video? The video of the that was shown of the wall weeping out, it looked like it was raining and the water was falling from the skies at the same time, so I couldn't tell if that was just running down the face or coming out of the blocks. The geogrids that are in there, and again, you know, the details that are on there are not, you know, we didn't draw a detail at every single location, so you know, it's kind of, they're kind of general details, but the geogrids are on there are in 2 levels. At elevation 37.9 and 38.9. The blocks that we were taking down won't require removal of those geogrids. There was a comment about what stops somebody from driving through the fence at the, you know, at the end of the patio. I'm not really sure what stops anybody from driving through any fence other than looking at a fence. I think those are
Mr. Besserman, Mr. Preddy, what about the issue about the joint compound that was on the old plans and doesn't appear to be on the most recent?
That was an inadvertent admission, and that would really only apply where the pavers butt up to the retaining wall. Everywhere else where it's you know, not pavers, there's material to encourage the water to get down into that stone level. And I will say that that there will need to be a soil ball basically around the plants wherever the shrubs are planted. Obviously, you can't just put them in landscape stone. Again, that's more really for the landscaper, but there was something else I wanted to mention.
Just before we leave the joint, so that'll get added to the plan?
When I changed the detail, I just forgot to put that back in.
Yeah. Okay.
There was a comment about you know, pulling the patio back and adding more vegetation, how that changes the drainage. Less pavement, more vegetation, it reduces the amount of runoff overall. So I think that's a good thing. But so at that point, I think I'll let Marjorie hand it off to some others.
Thank you.
Before we leave, Mr. Preddy, any questions from the commission regarding comments made by the interveners that Mr. Preddy might want to address? Okay, Attorney Ainsworth. Who else do you need to have speak this evening?
Attorney Shansky, you mean?
Oh, no, I think.
Pardon me, Attorney Shansky.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Matt Davison.
Thank you, Attorney Shansky. For the record, my name is Matt Davison with Davison Environmental. I reside in Guilford, Connecticut. I am a professional soil scientist. I am a professional wetland scientist. I'm a certified professional in erosion and sediment control, which is a CPES. I am a certified erosion and stormwater inspection, which is a CESSWI, and I'm a Connecticut certified forester. I've been working as a natural resource professional in Connecticut for about 25 years. In my normal course of duties, I do wetland delineation and impact assessments. I do town reviews, and I do stormwater inspections for erosion control and stormwater compliance. There's a few things I wanted to clear up here and just sort of summarize. And these are going to be wetland related issues. First, there has not been any adverse impact to this wetland as a result of what the McCabe's did. I have contended this. You have letters from Rima and Mr. Russo. None of us have seen a direct impact to this watercourse or wetland. What would a direct wetland impact look like? Well, in a case like this, I would be looking for erosion and sedimentation of that resource area. With the year we've had, with the type of rain we've had, if that is an issue, you would see it, and it has not occurred. I have not observed any, as I stated, direct wetland impacts or watercourse impacts as a result of the activities. As far as potential impacts, what are some potential impacts? Well, we've heard a lot of discussions about potential impacts from stormwater generated from the patio. I have zero concerns about potential impacts to the wetland from stormwater or pollutants that are in the stormwater getting into the wetland. Why do I say that? Well, you've had two engineers state for the record that the way that the vegetated buffer behind the patio, the stone that's in pervious materials that are beneath it are essentially detaining the 100-year storm. And that makes sense because that explains why we're not seeing erosion on the back of that slope. It's a steep slope. If there wasn't detention there, you would see erosion minimally in the form of rills. There's not even a rill on that slope. What about groundwater inputs? You know, could you have pollutants or in a 500-year storm? You know, could you have a discharge into groundwater, an active groundwater going down that slope and getting into the wetland? There's very little groundwater contribution to that wetland, or active groundwater contribution to that wetland. Why do I state that? The contributing drainage area is very small. Additionally, one of the primary wetland resources that we flag as wetland scientists are called groundwater seep wetlands or groundwater discharge wetlands. What are they? Well, groundwater discharge wetlands occur on hillsides, typically in till, where you have some type of restrictive layer below the surface. As groundwater moves down a slope and gets close to the surface, it'll break out. In this particular case, we have shallow ledge. In fact, we have visible ledge outcroppings. There are no groundwater seeps on this slope. So the statements that are being made about pollutants being generated from a patio of this size, weeping down behind that wall, which is detaining a 100-year storm, entering a vegetated slope, somehow interacting with trillions of roots, microbes, and fungi, and entering the wetland without any visible observations of groundwater discharge or surface water, it's conjecture. And I feel very strongly about this. This application is one of the most straightforward applications I've ever seen. I've been doing this for 25 years. When you hear another professional state a wetland impact as channelized flow coming from a patio of the size, channelizing in someone's basement, eroding a basement, blowing out a back door and going down into a wetland, that doesn't border on absurd. That's absurd. And I'm trying to be professional, but some of these statements that are being made they're laughable. Again, for the record, there have been no adverse impacts to this wetland. There will not be any adverse wetland impacts from the work, barring some of the things we've heard, such as the water coming off the patio and having the house fall into the wetland. And again, with the resource area, this stream, its primary hydrology is from a paved road above, where the stormwater goes from the paved road into two catch basins and just drains directly into the watercourse. The McCabe's property, I'll state again, is the highest quality segment of this resource area from Rustic Road down to the Sound, from what I can observe. the additional plantings that would be done along the buffer area there will only enhance this riparian corridor. And finally, with the comment about the stone mulch is a very common mulch to use. The plants are not rooted in the mulch, as they are not rooted in mulch in a planting bed. The stone just keeps the soil in place. The plants would be rooted in the underlying soil. And that's about all I have, unless anyone has any questions.
Okay. Now I think it's just hopefully an opportunity to see if any member of the public wants to make a comment.
So sorry, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Perugini had a quick comment.
All right, it's 9:30. Hopefully it is brief.
I'll be very brief. Again, for the record, Joe Perugini, Weston and Sampson. Just wanted to touch upon the concerns. When I see the video of the water flowing, you know, that amount of water, it raises a lot of questions for me. Having done test pits and evaluating groundwater, testing for high groundwater. This is the seasonal time of year. The high groundwater season is between February and May. You do have a fluctuation, but it is highest during these months. It just raises a lot of questions for me. That amount of water and how that amount of water could be coming from 38 Howard Avenue. And I thought I'd offer it for consideration that if that water, could it be flowing from another direction? And is that groundwater flow from an alternate direction? And that the only way to verify that is with test pits and groundwater monitoring. When I was out at the site, there is ledge coming from 38 Howard Avenue down to 34, and standing at the rear of 34, the ledge then picks back up. It's basically a bowl. And I couldn't help but think about, how is this water getting into this area? That amount of water, could it be coming from the opposite direction? You don't know unless you do test pits and do some kind of monitoring. So I think there's there's a lot of attention being given to this property, and is that water coming from this property? Myself and the other professionals do not believe that amount of water could be infiltrating through these type of pavers. They're not pervious pavers. Yes, they are not totally impervious, but that amount of water cannot be infiltrating down to create that amount of flow. So it just raises other questions. And you need a subsurface evaluation, some sort of test pits to evaluate, if any, is it coming from a different direction? Those are the questions in my mind. And it's unfortunate because it's an obvious problem. It's a visible problem. And you can't help feel for anyone that's dealing with those type of issues, because we get called out to deal with these type of high groundwater drainage issues all the time. And unfortunately, high groundwater, seasonal high groundwater it plays a big factor in this. So I just wanted to mention that. And as far as the stone behind the wall, a pipe is, we talked about a drainage pipe. Many times you have a wall that intercepts groundwater, and you need that pipe to intercept and create some relief and drainage. The stone is usually satisfactory unless you have groundwater running behind that wall. You have a steep wall, or if a wall is flat and you need somewhere for that water to go. I just want to make a point that behind this retaining wall, along the property line, the ledge slopes downward. So you have a concrete footing, that if any water is getting down through, it has to make its way down through the stone. Then it's being blocked by this footing, and it's following the natural grade of the contours that were on the plans and the grade of the ledge. So it's going northeast away from the property line. So it's going to follow the open graded crushed stone very easily before it would go down any fissures. If the grade was flat and the water had nowhere to go, then you need a pipe and you need something to help it drain, but the way the grades are and the way the topography is on the pre-development plans, water will easily find its way through that crushed stone in a northeast direction. That ends my few comments. Thank you.
Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. I just want to mention that there is a comment in the chat that video was taken in July.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask a question because I think that needs to be clarified. Ms. Nori, you took that video, did you not? Or you and your husband did?
Yep.
And you took that when?
July 16th, 2023.
Okay, and have you seen that kind of flow correlated with other rainstorms?
Yeah.
And when there's no rain, do you see less flow?
Yeah.
Okay. And that's regardless of season?
Yeah.
So I'd ask Mr. Perugini if that might influence his opinions.
May I make a comment about Mr. Perugini's comments?
You know, I think we've gotten quite a bit on the record on this one. As I say, we got other issues we got to deal with.
Well, there was a lot of speculation. There was a lot of speculation. I just wanted to give you a couple of facts.
Go for it.
I visited that site, the property, looked at that foundation wall prior to them rebuilding and building a second floor. There was no evidence of such water flow prior to that wall being built. And that is a personal experience, personal visual experience. I'm not speculating like any other consultants. I physically saw that. I saw the difference. Thank you.
Does that conclude, Attorney Shansky, the response to the intervener's comments?
Mr. Chairman, I have my own comments, but since I'd like to be, heard after whatever public is heard, I'll hold them until then.
Okay, do we have any hands raised for members of the public?
Commissioner Basserman, I just have one quick comment. This is Attorney Dab on behalf of the applicants. I have literally 20 seconds. I wasn't planning on speaking at all, but just need to respond to comments made by Attorney Ainsworth about what happened in court. It was not a trial. It was an injunction hearing. We don't have a decision, and the court is not going to address any wetlands issues and is leaving those issues to this commission. I think all of that's irrelevant, but because it was stated, I felt the need to just respond and clarify what the status is there.
Yeah, but there'll be an injunction.
Appreciate it. Okay, thank you. Enough on the court again. No other members of the public wish to speak tonight? Okay, we can.
Wait a minute. We do have a hand raised.
Oh, I just saw one. Where is it?
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Hello, I don't see a name.
Hello? Hi, can you hear me?
It's kind of broken up a little bit.
Hello?
Hello, that's better.
Hi, this is Victoria Go. I'm one of the neighbors in the neighborhood. I just moved into the area, but I just wanted to say that I've known and Sophia for more than a decade. And just based on the
Pardon me, it's real difficult to hear your comments.
Hello? I'm so sorry, I'm driving right now, so I don't know if you can hear me. Can you hear me?
You go in and out. You're fading in and out.
Mr. Chairman, could we get the speaker's address, please?
2 Brockett Plain Road.
It's difficult to hear your comment. One of the parties on the call is asking for your address.
Hello?
I'm here.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Barely. Is it possible to pull over and speak without driving?
Yeah, can someone else go before when I pull over? Can someone?
So while we're waiting for comment, do any other members of the public wish to provide comment?
Are you able to talk, ma'am? I don't know. It seems like we're needing to move on here. So we've heard from the applicant. We've heard from all the registered interveners. We've heard from the public. We have an opportunity at this point, I believe, to close the public hearing.
Oh, wait a minute. No.
What?
Mr. Chairman, I do have a few then remarks about the comments from the interveners, although I don't want to step on what Matt Davison said, which is really the pithiest and most significant response imaginable.
I think that's okay as long as we're not repeating what any of the three parties that spoke.
No, not going to repeat.
Okay.
I do want to say something about council's comments. The notion that this commission needed to see the pre-development condition in order to evaluate this application is not true. There's nothing in, and I certainly would not presume to tell you how this commission must decide. What I provided to you was the law on the requirement of substantial evidence, and the law on what interveners must produce, which, by the way, through the entirety of the various speakers have still not provided evidence or substantial evidence. The idea, Mr. Russo's comment, it's possible that you could have sediment. Again, Mr. Davison disposed of that nicely, but that does not meet the standard, the evidentiary standard. And council asked you to apply logic, not the law. That makes no sense either. With respect to the application on 22 Howard, which has been, I couldn't figure out if it was being put into this record as an application shaming attempt, but I will say that it appears on your agenda as a possible agent action without even coming to the full commission, and for which a $25 application fee was required, which should show the disparity. And when somebody, I think it was Mr. Russo, said there's a dearth of information on this project. My God, I've never had so many engineers involved in one effort, even doing some monumental development project. There is a mountain of evidence that has been provided to this commission. It is obviously that the neighbor who has expressed the many, 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 many concerns that she has is not a student of the inland wetland regulations in the administration, and that's fine because it's left to you, not her. And the answer about providing more ground for the water to infiltrate should be viewed as being a benefit. Mr. Chairman, I would like, if you will indulge me, to let Ms. McCabe speak to the commission.
Is there anything new that she is going to bring to the table after our lengthy discussion?
I think it would be important for you to hear her voice.
Briefly.
Good evening. My name is Kim McCabe, and I'm here with my husband, Charles Watts. First, we would like to thank the commission, Ms. Fredericks and Ms. Blanchett, for their time and consideration of this matter. We've listened to the commission's comments and questions, and through our professionals, worked to address all of them. As you know, as soon as we received the notice of violation, we called Criscuolo Engineering, which had already been working with us, and on our behalf, they contacted Ms. Fredericks to assure her of a full cooperation. To be proactive, Criscuolo Engineering obtained permission from Ms. Fredericks for a silt fence to be installed, which was done on April 28th of 2023. Since then, we've retained experienced counsel, wetland scientists, and engineers of different studies to help us navigate this complex process and fully comply with the regulations and all other legal requirements. Contrary to what has been advanced either directly by Dr. Nori and by Mr. Diaz-Romero or through their professionals, we never intended to violate or run afoul of any regulation. We were surprised and disappointed to receive the notice of violation and the cease and desist because we hired professionals to perform the work done on our backyard. But we were not surprised that Dr. Nori and Mr. Diaz-Romero had made a complaint to the zoning officer immediately after I had shared with them that I had thought we had a privacy issue because of their new bank of windows that overlooked our backyard. And although I had not selected or purchased a privacy fence, I did want one. They stopped speaking to us the next day. As background, around Memorial Day of 2022, we hired a solo landscaper to remove invasives and historical trash that predated our purchase of the property. That landscaper explained to us that he was starting his busy summer season and it might take him months to get it done, which was fine with us. The landscaper removed more than we expected, but we had always intended to replant it. We did not know that there were wetlands at the far north of our backyard, and unfortunately, neither did the landscaper. Thankfully, all of the wetlands experts in this case have not found no direct impact to the wetlands. In October of 2022, we met with the Branford zoning staff regarding the possibility of constructing a two-car garage. Based on that meeting, it was my understanding that in order to build a garage, we would need a topographical survey, permits, and a variance. The zoning staff also told us that walls under 3 feet did not require a permit. After some thought, we decided to forgo a garage and abandon those plans. Still, we wanted to plan for the future in our home, and I called to order a topographical survey and spoke to a surveyor and said that I was ready to pay the approximate $5,000 for it. I mentioned that we had met with the town about building a garage, but that we had changed our plans, and he offered to take a look at our property. A few days later, he let me know they had been in the area for another job and saw our property, and informally, he said that based on what I had told him, we didn't need a topographical survey. He also echoed what the zoning staff had told us about walls less than 3 feet, not requiring a permit. Based on a recommendation, we hired Dunn Landscape Construction, which is a Branford-based company that's been in business for over 20 years and has a good reputation. It was our expectation that Dunn would address any permits if needed. Also, to put our frame of mind in context, in the fall of 2022, my husband had a quadruple bypass followed by complications that required further surgeries and extended hospital stays. Thankfully, my husband is doing well, but both of us needed to put this project in the hands of a professional. Since July 13th of 2023, the date of our initial application, we've been asking for permission to take those measures recommended by Mr. Davison and Mr. Logan, who are wetland specialists, and asking permission to pull the wall off of the property of 34 and to lower it. Please know, we never intended to circumvent or skirt any regulation of the town of Branford. It's been suggested that we are wealthy people who are above the law and trying to throw money at this. This is very important to us. We've lived in our home for 15 years. My husband has had a host of medical issues since 2020. We want to be able to enjoy our home, and having access to the back door will help us with our future life in this home. It's not an immediate issue, but we definitely know that as we age and we have faced some challenging times, that would help us access our home and avoid the approximate 8 steps that we have to the front door. That is why we have tried to hire a number of professionals to answer your questions, and we appreciate their help. We appreciate your time. We never intended to take this much time. We know that it has been delayed as a result of some of the questions that have been asked and attempting to get those, as well as 2 requests for public hearings that extended it each time for at least 4 weeks so that it could be published. But I'm hoping that you will carefully consider what has been presented to you over the last year or so, with the many expertise that have been to the property and provided written detailed reports to answer the questions that you've raised. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you for yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. I think we've heard from everyone who wishes to speak this evening. We have had now a number of public hearing meetings. I believe the record at this point is complete, and we have an opportunity to close the public hearing. Is there any commissioner who feels that we need to continue this public hearing?
Jamie Frederick, Inland Wetland Agent. I just want to identify that there are 4 exhibits being added from the meeting itself. There's the photo, the video, which I request a copy of the video be submitted to our office so that we can have that for reference. Highlighted section of regulations that was shared. And then also Attorney Shansky has submitted a paper copy of her summary that she shared with the commission, which will also be entered into the record.
Great. Jamie, Commissioner Bassman, do we need to take a roll call vote on closing the public hearing?
Since town council is here, I'll defer to him.
Well, I was gonna make a motion that we close it. Can we do that?
Yeah, I think if someone makes a motion, you can do it. Show of hands.
With a roll call vote?
You could, if someone wants a roll call vote, have a roll call vote.
All right.
But I think you can call the vote as well.
Commissioner Bodie, you want to make that motion?
I'd like to make a motion that we close public hearing Inland Wetland 240102 38 Howard Avenue. And that all the public hearing materials will continue to be available to commission, including the new materials that have been added to the Dropbox for future consideration.
Commissioner Papantonis, second.
Any further discussion on that motion? Commissioner Goklowski, how do you vote?
Commissioner Goklowski, aye.
Commissioner Papantonis.
Commissioner Papantonis, aye.
Commissioner Begeman.
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Commissioner Boda, are you sitting this one out?
Or I'll abstain.
Okay. We now have a decision to make regarding deliberation on that public hearing.
This is Commissioner Boda. I'd like to make a motion that we table this discussion to a future meeting. It is 10 o'clock almost, and we still have several items on the agenda. We have how many days to close the public, to make a decision after the public hearing is closed?
35.
35 days. So Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent, my recommendation would be the commission table it and continue it to the May 9th meeting. So that way, if the commission wants staff to draft something up for consideration, there's still time to do that for the May 23rd meeting.
All right, so I make a motion that we table this discussion to the for Inland Wetland 24.01.02, 38 Howard Avenue to the May 9th meeting.
And a second on that?
Commissioner Goklowski, I second that.
All in favor of that? Any abstentions? Any, any negatives on that? All right, that only took almost 3 hours.
Just a
I guess we'll
reminder
see.
for
Go ahead.
commissioners, decisions made on the record, so please just make sure you're not looking at anything, outside of the record between now and the deliberations.
Okay. Thank you, all of those that participated in the public hearing that we had.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And we'll now move on to, well, I guess we're going to continue then the enforcement activity on 38 Howard Avenue as well. We've kind of
You want to
bundle these together, correct?
I will make a motion that we table conversation of item 3A, notice of violation 38 Howard Ave to at least the May 9th meeting, but potentially later. We'll say May 9th for now.
I'll certainly second that. On the 9th, we also have the peer review activities. So, all right. CC 22-1201, 21 Brainerd Road, construction without permit.
Excuse me, Peter, you didn't vote on the last.
And is that pertaining to 3A and 3B? The table?
I would like to amend my motion to include 3A and 3B. All matters with respect to 38 Howard.
I'll accept that amendment and second it. Now we take a vote, I guess. Commissioner Goklowski.
Commissioner Goklowski, aye.
Commissioner Papatonis.
Commissioner Papantonis, aye.
Commissioner Begeman.
Commissioner Begeman, aye.
Commissioner Basserman, aye. Now,
Mr. Chairman,
yes.
just one question. Is there any member of the commission? There were a lot of cases cited. There were legal claims. I'm just trying to anticipate if there is anything specific that commission members would like me to look at between now and the 9th. I mean, we'll clearly have more time once we get to a deliberation, but if there's anything in particular people
Would it be fair to say that if commissioners have items, they can email staff and we'll relay them to you?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's, if you're comfortable with that, I didn't want to offer that up.
I'm pretty sure people aren't processing very well right now.
I don't want to offer any more work up on this.
Can we do something different? If commissioners have issues with what they'd like town council to review, can they funnel that through you, Jamie? So that there's one kind of point of contact of collecting all of that and then forward that to Bill.
Yeah.
That might make it a little more efficient.
This is Commissioner Papantonis. I did write down all the sites and I did say I would look at all the cases. So when I pull them up, I can email them to Jamie and save Attorney Yanukovych a little work if you want me to do that.
Yeah, there's only one case that she cited, Commissioner Papantonis, that I do not have a copy of and read regularly. I mean, Riverbend.
I mean, we probably already have a lot of them in file. I also don't know how much.
Yeah. So there, but I mean, I'm happy to take whatever you got, but I was sort of following along, and they're all pretty standard cases.
This is Commissioner Bassman. One thing I was struck with was when they started talking about the long-term consequences.
Just for a point of clarification, this item has been tabled.
Yeah.
The motion was made and approved, and we should not be discussing it anymore.
Thank you.
Okay.
That's fair.
And that'll be a question that I'll forward to Jamie then for Bill. Cease and correct 22-1201, 21 Brainerd Road, construction without permit. Jamie?
I don't have an update on this one way or the other. I don't like this recommendation, but my recommendation is that we table it to the June 27th meeting. Unless
think
I have a change of circumstances to bring to the commission.
I don't think you'll get any pushback this evening on that.
So that would be both C and D. It
We
can
have to
change the
monitor it.
circumstances, could be changing ownership, it could be
Yeah.
changing condition, it could be that, you know, the wetlands are being impacted in, you know, new ways.
Okay. All right.
And
And
we
I-
are monitoring the foreclosure action still. There hasn't been any change in that since the last time we talked.
This is Commissioner Begemon. So there's been nothing, no new violations, no additional violations.
There's been no new activity that I'm aware of. I also have not heard from the property owner in response to requests for updates, requests for whether he's going to be attending the meeting. I still have not been able to gain access to confirm if that last section of the silt fence has been installed, but I was able to inspect a majority of the silt fence being installed.
And things are stable, Jamie?
Like I said, I've not inspected
Not so much.
recently. What I can say is that I did not, the handful of times I inspected when this was more recent on the commission's agenda, I was not seeing erosion, and the ground is pretty compact, from all the activities. So, granted, if he's not doing activity, it could be becoming less compact, but, I don't have high concerns that I think warrant taking extreme measures, if you will.
Okay. Okay, section 4, applications for review. Item A is
So is this tabled to
right, 9th?
July or June 27th, unless there's an update beforehand?
Yes.
Okay.
First item under application for review is tabled. B, item inland wetland 240401, 200 to 206 North Main, new service building for Premier Kia. Plans and a report were included in the material in the Dropbox. Are you having additional questions raised with what you've received, Jamie, or is this at this point ready for some kind of presentation this evening?
Yeah, Jamie Frederick and the Wetland Agent. So this was for receipt with no presentation at the last meeting. It is, so I would recommend that we go through at least a brief presentation so that commissioners can identify if there's any concerns. I did talk with the project engineer very briefly today about some preliminary comments, and the site plan has been provided to the town engineer for review. So without any more intro, I will hand it over to the applicant.
Thank you. Good evening. Just for the record, I'm Michael Ott. I'm a licensed professional engineer and land surveyor with Summerhill Civil Engineers and Land Surveyors in Madison. Matt Davison from Davison Environmental is here with us for this application also. I'm not sure if the owner is here. We are both here on behalf of Mr. Alvine, the owner of Premier Kia. I don't see his name, so I'm not sure if he's here. I will try to make this as brief as possible. I know it's really late. If that's okay with the commission.
Please proceed.
Yep. Yeah, and please stop me if you have any questions. I'll just try to give you as brief an overview, but hopefully complete enough to give you an understanding of the project. And I understand that you will not be acting tonight. Based on my conversation with Jamie, I understand other town staff have to finish reviewing it and give the commission comments. So may I share my screen?
Yes, you should be able to.
Okay. Okay, can the commission see my screen now?
Yes.
Okay, so this is two parcels of land, 200 and 206 North Main Street on the north side, directly across from the Premier Kia site. There are cars from the dealership parked on this site now. I'm sure you're all familiar with it, just trying to kind of get you oriented. So this is North Main Street on the bottom of the sheet, left and right. North, as you can see, is kind of diagonal up and to the right, and Interstate 95 is behind this parcel. So the northerly boundary of these two parcels actually are the common boundaries with the southerly highway line of 95. There was a building on the left-hand parcel, the west parcel, at one point in time. I don't know when it was demolished. The site improvements that remain on the site today are there's some bituminous concrete pavement, and there's some processed stone areas also on the site. There is a drainage easement that cuts across the site here. If you can see my cursor, in favor of the Connecticut Department of Transportation. The inland wetland that Matt Davison delineated and is here to talk about tonight, and is also described in his report that we submitted, is along the northerly boundary. If you can see my cursor, actually, if I zoom in a little bit better, maybe it'll be easier for you. If that's, hopefully that's better for you. And it is an inland wetland associated with a highway drainage ditch that runs parallel to the south side of the highway. Matt can describe that a little bit better, if you'd like, a little bit later. So the planned project would merge the two parcels and construct this. Mr. Alvine has called it an express service facility. It would involve constructing a one-story building here, generally in the same area where the building was previously. It would involve closing this existing curb cut and constructing a new one to the west, a little bit further to the west. It would also involve constructing a curb cut here along the easterly boundary. So the two curb cuts would be basically either side of the combined parcel's frontage. And in addition to the building, the other major site improvement would be to pave the area that is currently partially paved or is processed stone. And the plan, and if I go to a simpler plan here, the layout plan, the plan is to park cars in a more formal manner and, arranged properly in this large paved area, which is now either partially paved or partially processed stone. We are, if I go back to this is our site preparation plan, and you can see this hatched area is the area of existing bituminous pavement that will come out. There are also some light poles, existing area lighting on the site that will come down and will be reused. There's a sidewalk across the front of the parcel that'll get reconfigured a bit. In the end, it will remain, of course, but it gets reconfigured by the closure of this curb cut and the creation of this curb cut. There are some, the parcel has a bit of a history. Jamie has explained it to me. Jamie and Matt Davison and I met out at the site several weeks ago. There are waste concrete blocks. You can see them labeled here, and they run basically at the top of the slope along the rear parcel boundary. They end here at this end of the site, and then they continue down this way in this direction, kind of southerly towards North Main Street also. There are, and I'm gonna leave this part to Jamie and Matt, but there's some historic waste concrete blocks had been placed within the wetland some time ago, and it would appear that they were placed as sort of a low retaining wall, and fill was placed up against them, and that fill is shown here by these ground surface elevation contours. It represents the slope going down to the wetlands. So there's some history. There's an historic violation on this site, but again, I'll leave that to Matt and Jamie, or maybe the commission might want to hear more about that at the next meeting. The blue line is the 100-foot upland review area delineation. So in very simple, straightforward terms, we are collecting all the building roof water and all the stormwater runoff from the new pavement, with the exception of minor portions of the driveways that slope out to the road. But the major portion of impervious surface coverage is collected. All the paved areas are curbed, and everything is graded such that all surface water runoff from the building and the vast majority of the new paved areas, besides portions of the access drives, gets collected, directed into stormwater treatment structures, hydrodynamic separator type stormwater treatment structures, and then to subsurface infiltration systems. So there's two locations where that happens, where the water will get treated and then introduced to the ground. One is here. There's a single catch basin inlet, the stormwater treatment structure, and then the subsurface infiltration system, which is comprised of precast concrete leaching chambers. Exact same thing in this other corner of the site: catch basin, stormwater treatment structure, subsurface infiltration system. The infiltration systems have been sized, and we submitted sizing computations. They have enough storage volume. Actually, they have more storage volume than the computed water quality volume. We have computed the water quality volume in accordance with the new stormwater quality manual that went into effect, the Connecticut DEP stormwater quality manual that went into effect March 30th. The infiltration systems have more storage capacity than the water quality volume, and we also therefore meet the required retention volume. So we are storing at a minimum 100% of the water quality volume, retaining it on site and introducing it back into the ground.
Excuse me, this is Mr. But can you clarify why you would go with an underground engineered system as opposed to an above ground system, a greener system?
So there's, given the requirements of the owner and the use of the site, there isn't room to do a surface. On other sites, in other instances, with the right conditions, we at times would do a surface stormwater management basin, and many times do propose a constructed stormwater wetland. There isn't room on this site to do this, and actually, more importantly, this site, we learned by doing some test pits, excavating some test pits, is a filled site. It is actually, if I zoom in a little bit, you'll be able to. By the way, has the commission walked this site? Is anyone familiar with it?
I know where it is, Commissioner Bass. I know where it is, but we haven't, as a commission, walked the site.
Okay, so if you get it, I don't know if you do. If I'm not familiar with your commission, but if you do formal site walks or if you go individually, you'll see that. In fact, this probably will help. For instance, you see a spot elevation here of 96.9, so roughly 97. the wetland is down below elevation 90. So this is, and you see these ground surface elevation contours that are close together. And then when you back out onto the site, you'll see, I'll zoom back in a little bit here. I'm trying to, actually, let me go to the existing conditions plan. It'll be a lot easier to see. So the site is essentially at the street elevation and very flat until you get to the rear, where it dramatically slopes down. And it looks like, when you look at the site, it looks like it was a filled site, historically filled. And sure enough, when we did test pits, there's a good 8 feet plus of fill that has been placed on this site. And it's miscellaneous fill, it's miscellaneous earth fill, a mixture of different soil types. It's also, in the test pits we encountered broken concrete pieces. There's some pre-stressed concrete pieces here on the site, and other miscellaneous concrete pieces on the site. The site is, when the commission walks it, I think you'll all agree, it's very obviously a filled site, and it's raised up at least 8 feet, actually more than the wetland elevation.
Yes, Commissioner Bassman, pardon my ignorance. What does the issue with it being filled have to do with then a surface stormwater treatment plan?
So for instance, to construct a stormwater wetland, we would normally, in order to support wetland plantings, and Matt Davison can jump in here if I go awry, but to support the wetland plants, to provide the proper functions of the stormwater wetland, we would be excavating down 8 to 9 feet. We would be creating an 8 to 9 foot hole on this site. And it would, that excavation and its size and its side slopes, when you're that deep, when you excavate down that deep, would back itself up into the site, the site proper, the usable portion of the site, and the owner simply wouldn't be able to use it. I
don't understand that. I guess when you say use it, is there something in the construction of the site that would not be engineered correctly, or does it, because of the size of it, limit the number of cars you can park?
Exactly. Yeah, the depth. So the depth of the site in this direction, if you can see my cursor, so if we built a surface stormwater management facility, whether it was a stormwater wetland or not, in really simple terms, it would take up so much area that the site, the owner would not be able to use the site as he plans to. So we did the best we could to strike a balance between what the owner would like to do with the site and actually how he's using the site today, and protection of the adjacent wetland. And that's why we have subsurface infiltration systems, and that's why we have treatment before we introduce the water. Today, as you might imagine, surface water runoff runs off the site, directly down the slope and directly to the wetland. When we're done,
This Commissioner Basserman, if in fact the surface was pervious, would that reduce the size of the hole that you need to dig?
No, and that's a very good question. I was about to get to this. Unfortunately, when we excavated the test pits, we learned that the miscellaneous fill and the depth of it precludes we can't count on a treatment function in that miscellaneous fill, because it's made up of miscellaneous earth material, different soil types, and concrete, waste concrete. That's the reason that we're treating it with stormwater treatment structures first. We cannot, we actually said that in our narrative, we cannot count on the natural soils. There are no natural soils above the water table to be able to treat the stormwater. So if we had a pervious surface and we allowed that water to go straight down, it's not providing a treatment function because it's infiltrating through miscellaneous fill and concrete, broken concrete. Does that make sense?
I guess it makes sense in the theoretical. I guess, is that material that filled throughout the site?
The best we can tell, yes. And I can let Matt might want to add to this, but you can't, for sure, I can tell you, you cannot count on miscellaneous fill with waste concrete block in it to provide treatment of stormwater. We don't have any natural soils or natural soil structure to provide that treatment.
Let's not beat that one to death here.
Yeah.
This is Commissioner Goklowski. The historical use of that site was the body shop. It was called the Carriage Shop, I believe, for as long as I've been around, up until they tore the building down a few years ago. But I mean, growing up as a kid, that was always a body shop, that whole parcel of land there. And I remember that land was getting filled in, little by little, until it's existing today. But the historical site, it was a body shop repair facility.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. I just knew that there was a building on it previously. Was the building on the west side of the site as I described?
Yes.
Yeah, Jamie Frederick and the wetland agent. There used to be the building used to be approximately in this location here. So what just to kind of help orient commissioners, I'm sharing a recent aerial image. It looks like from August of last year, showing what the site kind of looks like today. You can see the concrete block wall that's on the existing site plan. This wetland delineation is the old wetland delineation. It's geo-referenced. It's approximate. I don't think it's actually this close to where the block wall is. I did take the wetland delineation from the current application, the site plan with the current wetland delineation, and overlaid it with the old wetland delineation site plan, and they pretty much align for the most part in the extent of where activity is proposed. So this plan was approved. Well, this is the landscape plan. This is one of the plan sheets of the approved plan from 2019. The proposed activity did extend a little bit further eastward on site. You can kind of see, if you look closely, there's a dashed line here. That's the mafia blocks that were in the wetland. They were to be taken out and moved to the top of the slope, and any fill material removed and this slope vegetated. Looking at our records, it looks like some of the mafia blocks or concrete blocks were removed to the extent I'm not really sure. But the wetland delineation, again, from this file and the current file is pretty similar. So it does not appear that any material that may be remaining has impacted the extent of the wetland. There are still some miscellaneous blocks in the wetland. I don't know that it makes sense to try and take them out at this point. The applicant has mentioned site walk. I don't know if that's something the commission feels would be helpful for this application, but also it sounds like Matt Davison also has a presentation, so I don't know if you want to hear from him before.
I don't know if I'd call it a presentation.
Comments, I don't know. Ability to answer questions.
No, I can speak to this. So for the record, Matt Davison, professional soil scientist, professional wetland scientist. I flagged this site a while back, and then I didn't hear about it again until Mike called me, and then we did do a site walk with Jamie and Mike, and we did discuss some of these same issues and concerns that you're discussing now. And so the wetland itself is, I would call it it's a linear wetland, almost like a swale, and it's primarily picking up runoff from the highway. And if you go look closely at the wetland, you can see clearly there's degradation as a result of inputs from the highway. It's essentially a Phragmites monoculture, a common reed monoculture at this point. And I think, Jamie, we discussed, is there something we can do there with with that being an invasive species? And in this particular case, I actually think frag is actually a good thing there. The reason I say that is where you don't want Phragmites or common reed as a monoculture is where you want to promote wetland functions related to wildlife, because it's really not, some things nest in there, but it's essentially just a monoculture that's not providing optimal wildlife habitat. But what Phragmites is good for is promoting water quality functions. And in a setting like this, I think that is by far the most important function you want to promote in a wetland that's collecting stormwater runoff from the highway and then this area as well. So I think it's okay. We did discuss potentially removing some of the blocks and fill that were in there. And I didn't think that and essentially expanding the wetland out. I didn't think the added wetland capacity was warranted, like additional wetland disturbance there. It doesn't look like the wetland, the groundwater levels or the surface water levels even are fluctuating a lot. It looks like the wetlands handling the water that's coming off the highway perfectly fine. With respect to the stormwater treatment, so I'll give you my professional opinion on this stormwater treatment system and generally my feelings on it, which I think sort of aligns with the stormwater quality manual. Certainly above ground basins like you described, which would be considered in the old manual primary treatment, are the best treatment systems. For raw land developments, I always request on projects that I'm working on that you need to demonstrate to me that you can't provide primary treatment if it's a raw land development. In this particular case, it's a redevelopment. So on redevelopments, you look to improving stormwater treatment, and it doesn't necessarily have to be primary treatment. And currently, a lot of the water, I think it's areas, it's gravel, but I think a lot of it's impervious. There is some, like Mike said, some old remnant bituminous, but I think a lot of stormwater is generally flowing off this site now directly into the wetland. So curbing it and putting an underground infiltration system would, I think, improve things. We also discussed incorporating a buffer planting plan between the curb and the wetland. So in other words, the parking area would not extend all the way to the wetland. We provide a vegetated buffer. With respect to the underground infiltration systems, they actually function pretty well. There's a study at a University of New Hampshire where they evaluate various stormwater treatment systems over a long period of time. And the underground stormwater infiltration systems function pretty well, almost comparable to primary treatment systems when you have pre-treatment. The system that they studied at University of New Hampshire was similar to this, an underground treatment system, with the only difference being that they had what's called an isolator row in there, which is essentially just a pipe wrapped in filter fabric. But the stormwater quality unit that Mike's explaining would essentially function the same way. It would clean it out before it goes into the underground infiltration system. What I will say about underground infiltration systems, and I feel very strongly about this, is that they need to be maintained. The cleanouts need to be very easily accessible. I've seen systems designed where it's almost impossible to get into them to maintain them, and it appears to me as if they never intend to clean them. They have to be cleaned to function properly. The other thing I'll say about underground infiltration systems, and I haven't looked at it, but I know Mike does a very thorough job, is that there's also design requirements for separation of groundwater and the infiltration rates that are beneath that system. So when you talk about the site was filled before, you would definitely want to find out what's beneath your system, make sure that you have the adequate separation to groundwater, and also it would allow you to over excavate if you needed to, and put in suitable material if you needed to. So I think that if it's done right, it would actually improve the from what's there now. But I do think it would be valuable to see the site because, like I said, the wetland is pretty severely degraded. You can see evidence of materials that are coming in from the highway and that are in the system now, and other certain indicators that are indicative of water quality degradation, like iron oxide and some some things that have gotten in from the basically soil erosion, probably from upgrading areas. I think that's all I have.
Commissioner Bassman, I guess the issue that we just need to affirm tonight or not is whether a group site walk needs to be scheduled, or whether it's possible for commissioners individually to look at the site. The advantage of a group walk would be maybe, Matt, you'd be able to attend and point out what you feel is important on this site, as opposed to individual commissioners. But I leave it up to the commission body as a whole to decide whether it's worth it or not.
I would be happy to do that.
Any takers on a group walk?
Commissioner Begeman, I'm up for that.
Should we schedule that, 5:30 or 5 o'clock on the 9th of May?
That works for me. I don't know about others.
I can't do Thursdays before meetings.
Say 5 o'clock would be needed in order for me to get back in time to start the meeting. It worked last time, but I would prefer to do a day different than the regularly scheduled
Meeting day? Okay. Before we pick a date, what time would be worthwhile?
5 works if we could do like a Tuesday or a Tuesday.
That's the 7th?
Yeah.
Tuesday the 7th?
That's fine with me.
5 o'clock? Does that work for you, Matt?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
All right, that's it for me, folks. I will see you. I'm packing up.
Sleep tight.
All right, so we'll send a copy of the site walk agenda out to the applicant and the commissioners for Tuesday, the 7th at 5 p.m.
Let's see, item C, 22 Howard Avenue. I think we table that.
And continue this to for the review to the May 9th meeting.
Correct. I'm going to make a motion that we move the regulation discussion to another meeting. I'm not going to
So
be
the question is,
specific
we've
on when.
scheduled a lot of stuff for May 9th. Do you want to
Push it.
May 23rd?
Sure, why not?
All right, so I mean, this is also just kind of to discuss timing and process.
Right.
But so we'll pick it up May 23rd.
Okay, and we have
Sounds
two
good.
applications for receipt.
Which are just for receipt.
Yeah, just for receipt, and I don't see anybody on the call for either of them. Am I right on that, Jamie?
Sorry, for the applications for receipt?
Yes.
No, per our new standard practice, they're just for receipt.
Right. And we have a couple agent reviews.
Yeah, so 72 Parish Farm Room and 10 High Meadow. I have to follow up with the property owner. He did email me and I owe him a response. And then 91 Stone Standard Ave was approved per discussion with the commission at the last meeting. And they were notified that the native plantings were as of right.
Okay. Any other items for discussion this evening? Well, then I bid you all adieu and thank you for your attendance.
Good night, everyone.
Good night. We have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
You've reached the end of the agenda. You can just end it as chair.
Oh, I said I'm going to leave the meeting. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
This program was brought to you in part through the support of the Town of Branford. Watch town meetings and other videos on demand at BranfordTV.org.